The light turns green, but traffic barely moves. A horn blares from behind, impatient, and Jane feels a familiar tightening in her chest. Her phone, lying on the passenger seat, buzzes incessantly, each vibration a fresh demand, an email that needs a reply, a social media post showcasing a life she feels she is failing to live, a news alert about a world on edge. She is a portrait of modern success, with the right job, the right car, the right aspirations, but inside there is a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety, a quiet desperation. She feels as if she is running a race she never signed up for, towards a finish line that keeps moving further away. This feeling of being stuck, not just in traffic, but in a life that feels both full and empty at the same time, is the quiet affliction of our era. Her story, in many ways, is our story. We are the architects of a world that promises connection at the speed of light, yet we feel more isolated than ever. We are told to hustle, to optimize, to achieve, to acquire, living by a gospel of more that has led to a profound spiritual famine. We exist in a state of perpetual distraction, our minds caught in a tug of war between the regrets of the past and the anxieties of the future, rarely, if ever, finding a home in the present moment. This is not a personal failure. It is a collective condition, the predictable outcome of a life lived on the surface. But what if there was another way? A path that does not ask you to run faster, but instead invites you to simply stop. A path that doesn't seek answers in the noise of the world, but in the silence within. This is not a new idea. In fact, it is an ancient one, a form of wisdom that can be viewed not as a religion, but as a deep science of the mind, a practical set of tools tested for millennia to address these very states of restlessness and unease. It begins with the simplest, most overlooked, yet most profound tool we all possess. It begins with the breath, that steady, reliable anchor that can bring us out of the storm of our thoughts and back into the calm sanctuary of the present moment. It is a gentle homecoming, a return to the peace that is not built, but discovered. To begin this journey, we must first have the courage to look at where we are. We must be willing to acknowledge the subtle, unseen noise that hums beneath the surface of our busy lives. The ancient language of this path, Pali, has a word for this condition, a word that is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is far deeper and more nuanced. The word is dukkha. To hear the word suffering can be jarring. It brings to mind images of great tragedy, immense pain, and profound loss. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, that is only its most obvious and coarse expression. For most of us living in the modern world, dukkha is not a dramatic singular event, but a chronic, underlying state of being. It is the feeling Jane had in her car, that quiet sense of dissatisfaction. It is the restlessness that makes it hard to simply sit still without reaching for a phone. It is the low-grade anxiety that accompanies you even on a pleasant day, a subtle feeling that something is not quite right, that you are missing something. It is the friction between the life we have and the life we think we should have. It is the experience of a beautiful sunset, where a part of our mind is already mourning the fact that it will end. It is the joy of a new achievement, a promotion or a purchase that very quickly fades and becomes the new, unremarkable baseline, leaving us to seek the next thing. This is dukkha. It is not just pain, it is unsatisfactoriness, a fundamental dis-ease. The Buddha's first great teaching, the foundation upon which the entire path is built, was not a commandment or a creed. It was a diagnosis. It was a compassionate, unflinching acknowledgement of this truth. There is dukkha. This is the first noble truth. And perhaps the most radical part of this statement is the implication that this feeling is not your fault. In a culture that champions individualism and personal responsibility for happiness, feeling this constant unease can often feel like a personal failure. We think, if I were smarter, more disciplined, more positive, I wouldn't feel this way. We blame ourselves. We add a layer of judgment and shame on top of the initial discomfort, creating a cycle of suffering about our suffering. But this first truth offers a profound liberation. It says that this feeling, this dukkha, is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are a sensitive, awake human being. It is an inherent part of a conditioned existence, a shared reality that binds us all. To feel it is not to fail. It is to be in touch with the fundamental nature of life as it is often experienced. It is the universal starting point. There is an ancient story that illustrates this with heartbreaking beauty. It is the story of a young woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived a happy life, and her world revolved around her only son, a bright and beautiful little boy. Then one day, tragedy struck. The boy fell ill and, in a matter of hours, he died in her arms. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so powerful it shattered her reality. She refused to believe her son was gone. Clutching his small, still body, she went from house to house, from person to person, desperately seeking medicine that could bring him back. Some people turned away from her. Others pitied her. Some thought she had gone mad with grief, but no one could help her. Finally, someone suggested she go see the Buddha, a wise teacher who was staying in a grove nearby. Carrying her son, she ran to him, fell at his feet, and explained her desperate quest. She begged him for the medicine that would revive her child. The Buddha looked at her not with pity, but with a deep, calm compassion. He did not dismiss her. He said to her, "I can help you, but to make the medicine, I need a special ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed." Kisa Gotami's hope surged. A mustard seed was such a simple thing, but, the Buddha continued, the mustard seed must come from a house where no one has ever died, no child, no parent, no spouse, no friend, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Kisa Gotami began her search. She went to the first house in the village. A kind woman came to the door. "Can you spare a mustard seed for the wise man's medicine?" Kisa Gotami asked. "Of course," the woman said, moving to get it. "But first, tell me, has anyone in this house ever known death?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said softly, "the living are few, but the dead are many. We buried my beloved husband just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gotami moved to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere she went. Every family, behind every door, had a story of loss. One had lost a parent, another a sibling, another a child, just like her. "You can have all the mustard seeds you want," one man said, his eyes filled with a distant sadness, "but they cannot bring back the memory of my brother." She spent the entire day walking, from the wealthiest mansions to the poorest huts, and in every home she found kindness and she found grief. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the fields, Kisa Gotami sat down by the side of the road, her son's body still in her lap. The hope that had driven her all day was gone, replaced by a vast, quiet understanding. She was not alone in her pain. Her terrible, world-shattering grief was not a curse that had fallen only upon her. It was the human story. Loss was woven into the very fabric of life, as common and as universal as the setting of the sun. In that moment of profound realization, her frantic, desperate grief began to transform. The sharp, isolating edges of her personal tragedy softened into a deep, connective sorrow, a boundless compassion for all the other people behind all those doors. She understood. She gently wrapped her son, carried him to the cremation grounds, and let him go. She then returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with a quiet mind. He simply asked, "Did you find the seed?" And she replied, "The work of the seed is done. My sorrow was my own, but now I see it is the sorrow of the world. Allow me to take refuge in your teaching." This is the first step on the path. It is the work of the mustard seed. It is the courage to do what our modern culture teaches us to avoid at all costs, to turn towards our discomfort. We are experts at distraction. The moment that familiar hum of dukkha arises, we reach for our phone, we turn on the television, we pour a drink, we go shopping, we busy ourselves with work. We do anything to avoid a direct encounter with the feeling. We believe that if we ignore it, it will go away. But it never does. It simply waits, humming beneath the surface, draining our energy, coloring our experience of life. The path of wisdom invites a different response. It asks us to turn towards the feeling, not with judgment or fear, but with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity, just as Kisa Gotami did on her journey. To look at our anxiety, our restlessness, our dissatisfaction, and to acknowledge its presence, to say, "Ah, here you are, I see you." This act of turning towards is not an act of wallowing in misery, it is an act of gathering information. To heal a wound, you must first be willing to look at it clearly. To navigate a territory, you must first be willing to see the map as it truly is, not as you wish it to be. To acknowledge this universal condition, this dukkha, is not an act of pessimism, it is an act of profound realism and courage. It is the necessary first step. It is the moment you stop running from your own experience and finally stand your ground. It is the foundation of all true peace, because peace cannot be built on a bedrock of denial. It must be built on the clear, compassionate, and courageous seeing of things as they are. And once we have found the courage to look at the symptom, to accept the diagnosis of the first noble truth, the next logical, and perhaps even more hopeful, question arises: what is its cause? Having found the courage to look at the symptom, to acknowledge the universal condition of dukkha without blame or judgment, we arrive at the next crucial step in our investigation. A diagnosis, no matter how accurate, is incomplete without an understanding of the cause. If we feel a constant low-grade fever, it is not enough to simply know we have a fever. We must ask, where is the infection coming from? The Buddha's second great insight, the second noble truth, addresses this directly. It is called samudaya, which translates as the origin or the cause of dukkha. And here, the teaching takes a radical turn, one that is both challenging and incredibly empowering. It states that the primary cause of our dissatisfaction does not lie in the external world. It is not our job, our partner, the political climate, or the rudeness of a stranger on the street. These are merely the triggers, the occasions for suffering. The root cause, the teaching suggests, is internal. It is an activity happening within our own minds. The Pali word for this root cause is trishna. It is often translated as craving or desire, but its essence is more akin to a deep, primal thirst. It's not a simple want. It is a compulsive, urgent, and deeply ingrained habit of the mind to grasp at things it finds pleasant and to violently push away things it finds unpleasant. This thirst is the engine of our discontent, the restless architect of our own mental prison. When we look closely, we can see this architect is constantly at work, building the walls of our suffering through three primary activities. The first and most obvious is the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the relentless pursuit of agreeable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and physical sensations. In our modern world, this form of trishna has been amplified into a cultural imperative. It is the engine of consumerism, the silent promise that the next purchase, the next meal, the next vacation, the next hit of dopamine from a social media notification will finally deliver a lasting sense of satisfaction. We scroll through images of perfect lives and perfect bodies, and the thirst to have, to experience, intensifies. We chase these fleeting pleasures like a person in a desert chasing a mirage, and each time we arrive, the satisfaction evaporates almost immediately, leaving the thirst not quenched, but often stronger than before. We are conditioned to believe that happiness is something to be acquired from the outside, and so we spend our lives in a state of perpetual seeking, never quite arriving. The second form of this thirst is more subtle, yet for many of us, far more powerful. It is the thirst to become something, the thirst for existence in a particular way. This is the voice of the ego, the constant nagging feeling that we are not enough as we are. It is the engine of the if-only trap. If only I get that promotion, then I will feel secure. If only I lose 10 pounds, then I will feel worthy of love. If only I were more confident, more disciplined, more spiritual, then my life would be whole. We project an idealized version of ourselves into the future, a future self who is finally happy, finally peaceful, finally complete. This thirst to become creates a fundamental schism in our being, It pulls our attention away from the reality of our life in this moment and fixes it on a fantasy. We are no longer living, but perpetually preparing to live, always on the way to a destination we never reach. Because as soon as one goal is met, the thirsty mind immediately creates another. This is the very essence of the rat race, not just in our careers, but in our internal worlds as well. The third form of thirst is the mirror image of the first two. It is the thirst to not become, the thirst for non-existence, more commonly understood as aversion. This is the forceful pushing away of anything we find unpleasant. It is our reaction to pain, to criticism, to failure, to sickness, to a traffic jam, to an opinion we disagree with. The mind says, I don't want this, get it away from me. This aversion is not a passive dislike. It is an active, energy-consuming struggle. When we are criticized, we don't just hear the words, we feel a visceral need to defend ourselves, to argue, to push back. When we feel anxious, our first impulse is to escape it, to numb it, to distract ourselves. This constant pushing away creates immense tension in our minds and bodies. We live in a state of resistance, clenched and braced against the inevitable difficulties of life. This aversion is just as powerful a source of dukkha as craving is. The desperate pulling towards the pleasant and the desperate pushing away of the unpleasant are two sides of the same coin, two poles of the same restless magnet that keeps our minds in a state of perpetual agitation. There is a powerful Zen parable that captures this human predicament with stark clarity. A man is walking through a field when he comes upon a ferocious tiger. He turns and flees, the tiger hot on his heels. He runs to the edge of a cliff, and with no other option, he grabs hold of a thick vine and swings himself down over the abyss. As he hangs there, suspended between the tiger on the cliff above and the rocky chasm below, he looks down and sees, to his horror, another tiger on the ground, looking up at him, waiting. His situation is utterly precarious. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he sees two mice, one white and one black, emerge from a crevice in the cliff. They begin to calmly, methodically gnaw at the very vine he is clinging to. His lifeline is being eaten away. In this moment of absolute terror and impending doom, he notices something else. A wild strawberry plant is growing from the cliff face near him, and on it hangs a single, ripe, red strawberry. Forgetting the tiger above, the tiger below, and the mice gnawing at his vine, he reaches out, plucks the strawberry, and puts it in his mouth. The story ends with a simple question: how sweet it tasted. This story is a map of our own minds. We are that man. The tiger above represents the life we are running from, the past and its pressures. The tiger below is the future we fear, the certainty of death and decay. The vine is our fragile, temporary life. And the two mice, the black and the white, are night and day, the relentless passage of time, steadily eating away at our existence. And the strawberry? The strawberry is the fleeting sense pleasure, the momentary distraction, the small hit of sweetness that we prioritize above all else. In the face of our terrifying and inescapable reality, our minds, driven by Trishna, are fixated on the next tiny, transient pleasure. We are so busy chasing the strawberry, the next compliment, the next purchase, the next distraction, that we completely ignore the profound precarity of our situation. The story isn't a judgment. It is a compassionate observation of our shared programming. It reveals the hypnotic power of this thirst, which keeps us focused on the trivial while ignoring the essential. To see this mechanism at work within ourselves is not to condemn ourselves. It is to finally understand the blueprint of our own prison. We see that the bars are not made of external circumstances, but of our own internal reactions of grasping and rejecting. Every time we are hooked by a craving, a bar is forged. Every time we react with aversion, another bar is put in place. We are the architects, the builders, and the prisoners all at once. And while this realization can be sobering, it is also the most hopeful news we could ever receive. If our suffering were caused by the world, by other people, by circumstances beyond our control, we would be helpless victims, forever at the mercy of life's unpredictable chaos. But because it is caused by our own internal habit of Trishna, it means the solution also lies within our grasp. It means the key to the prison is in our own pocket. It suggests that if we can learn to stop compulsively building the walls, we might just find that the door has been unlocked all along. This leads us to the most liberating question of all. What would it mean to stop? What does freedom from this relentless thirst truly look like? We have walked together into the heart of the human condition, looking directly at the symptom of our dis-ease, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness we call dukkha. We have delved deeper to find its source, discovering the restless, internal engine of thirst and craving, the architect of our own prison, which we call Trishna. To stop here would be to present a diagnosis that is both accurate and profoundly bleak. It would be like a physician telling a patient they have a serious illness and explaining its complex cause, only to then fall silent, offering no hope of a cure. But the journey does not end in this shadowland of cause and effect. In fact, the most vital and luminous part of the teaching is yet to come. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. It is the most hopeful news imaginable. Nirodha is a Pali word that means cessation, ending, release, or containment. It is the truth that the fever of suffering can break. It is the truth that the prison of our own making has a door, and that this door can be opened. This state of release is often known by another name, a word that has been absorbed into Western culture and is now laden with 1,000 misconceptions: nirvana. For many, the word conjures images of a blissful, otherworldly paradise, a rock band from the 90s, or a state of checked out, passionless apathy. It's crucial that we clear the ground of these ideas to understand what it truly means. Nirvana is not a place you go to after you die. It is not a heaven. It is not a state of being annihilated or ceasing to exist. It is a psychological reality that can be experienced right here in this very life. The literal meaning of the word nirvana is to extinguish or to blow out, as one would blow out a candle flame. This is the most important metaphor we have. The question then becomes, what is being extinguished? The teaching is very precise about this. It is not the flame of life or personality or joy that is blown out. What is extinguished are the three fires that fuel all our suffering: the fire of greed and grasping, the fire of hatred and aversion, and the fire of ignorance and delusion. These are the very fires of Trishna. Imagine your mind as a room lit by three raging, smoky fires. The fire of greed constantly demands more fuel, making you run around trying to find things to throw on it, convinced your happiness depends on it. The fire of hatred violently pushes things away, scorching you with anger and resentment. And the fire of delusion fills the room with a thick, confusing smoke, so you can't see things clearly and are constantly bumping into furniture. To live in this room is exhausting, painful, and confusing. This is the state of dukkha. Nirodha, or nirvana, is the process of allowing these three fires to die down. It is the cessation of feeding them with our reactive thoughts and actions. And when the fires are extinguished, what is left? Not a cold, dark, empty room. What is left is the room itself in its natural state. The air becomes clear. You can see things as they are. There is a coolness, a stillness, a spaciousness that was there all along, but was simply obscured by the heat, the light, and the smoke. Peace is not something you add to the mind. It is the natural condition of the mind once the agitation of the fires has been removed. You realize that you are not the fire. You are the space in which the fire happens. A common and practical question arises here. Does this mean that if I experience this peace, all my problems will disappear? Does it mean the mortgage will be paid, my difficult coworker will become pleasant, and my body will never get sick again? The answer is a clear and simple no. The world continues to be the world. The waves of life, with all their challenges and uncertainties, do not stop. The third noble truth does not promise an end to external problems. It promises an end to our internal suffering in response to those problems. It promises a fundamental shift in our relationship with reality. Instead of being a small, leaky boat tossed around helplessly by every wave. You discover a deep, unshakable stability within. You learn how to surf the waves of life with balance, grace, and even joy. The external events may still be challenging, but they no longer have the power to capsize you because you are no longer at war with them. You are no longer creating the second arrow of suffering, the internal reaction of craving and aversion. You are free from the friction, the resistance that was the true source of the pain all along. There is a simple story that illustrates this principle beautifully. A man has been walking all day under a hot sun and is desperately thirsty. He finally comes upon a small pond, a potential source of life-giving water. But as he gets closer, his heart sinks. The water is thick and cloudy with mud. It has been stirred up and it's undrinkable. His first, untrained impulse might be to become frantic. He might plunge his hands into the water, trying to physically separate the mud from the liquid, an impossible task that only makes the water murkier. He might get angry at the pond or despair at his situation. This is how we often approach our own minds. When we are filled with the mud of anxious thoughts, anger, or confusion, our first impulse is to fight. We try to force ourselves to be calm. We wrestle with our thoughts. We try to suppress our feelings. And in doing so, we just stir up more and more mud. But this traveler is a wise one. He understands the nature of ponds and the nature of minds. Instead of fighting the situation, he does something profoundly simple. He sits down on the bank of the pond. He stops striving. He lets the pond be exactly as it is, in all its muddy confusion. He simply waits with patience and stillness. And then, a quiet miracle occurs. The laws of nature, which are always at work, begin their gentle process. The heavier particles of mud, no longer being agitated by struggle, slowly begin to settle. Gravity draws them down to the bottom of the pond. Over time, without any effort on the part of the man, the water begins to clear. The cloudiness recedes, and the natural, inherent purity of the water is revealed. Soon it is perfectly clear, and he can cup his hands, drink his fill, and quench his thirst. Our mind is this pond. The endless stream of thoughts, feelings, anxieties, and desires is the mud. Our usual state is one of constant agitation, constantly stirring up the mud. The practice of wisdom, the path to Nirodha, is not about fighting the mud. It is about learning how to sit peacefully on the bank and allow the mud to settle of its own accord. The peace, the clarity, the coolness of nirvana is the natural state of the water. It was never absent. It was only obscured. This story reveals the most empowering aspect of the third noble truth. Liberation is our birthright. Peace is the mind's default setting. It is not something we need to create, achieve, or import from an outside source. It is an intrinsic potential, hardwired into our very being, waiting to be uncovered. The path, therefore, is not a path of striving and building, but one of undoing, of letting go, of allowing the unnecessary to fall away so that the essential, which is already present, can shine through. We have now seen the full diagnosis. The symptom, the pervasive dis-ease of dukkha. The cause, the internal fires of craving and aversion we call trishna. And the prognosis, the profound hope of Nirodha, the cessation of these fires and the revealing of an unshakable peace. We have a map that shows us where we are stuck, and it shows us a possible destination marked freedom. The diagnosis is complete, and the prognosis is profoundly hopeful. What we need now is the prescription. We need the practical, step-by-step instructions for the journey. How, exactly, do we sit by the muddy pond? How do we allow the fires to die down? This prescription, this set of detailed instructions for walking out of the prison, is what the Buddha called the path. We have arrived at a pivotal moment on our journey. We have looked squarely at the reality of our inner discontent, our dukkha. We have identified its source in the relentless internal thirst of trishna. And we have been given the profound and liberating news of Nirodha, the truth that this suffering can end, that the fires of greed and hatred can be extinguished, revealing the mind's innate, unshakable peace. A complete diagnosis has been made, and the prognosis is one of ultimate hope. What remains is the most practical and essential piece of the puzzle, the prescription. How do we actually walk from the state of suffering to the state of freedom? How do we get from here to there? The answer lies in the fourth and final noble truth, the truth of the path itself. The Pali word for this is magga. This is the how-to guide, the detailed instruction manual for the cultivation of peace and wisdom in our daily lives. This is the noble eightfold path. The metaphor of a path is chosen with great care. A path is not a singular event. It is not a magic pill or a lightning bolt of sudden transformation. A path is something you walk, step by step. It requires your active participation, your energy, your attention. It has a direction, leading from confusion to clarity, from agitation to calm, from bondage to freedom. This is not a path of blind faith, but one of personal discovery and direct experience. It is a curriculum for living, a comprehensive training program for the heart and mind. And because it is a path, it is open to anyone who chooses to walk it, regardless of their background or beliefs. It is called the Eightfold Path because it is composed of 8 interconnected factors that, when cultivated together, create a complete and holistic transformation. It is crucial to understand that these are not 8 sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one after another. It is much more accurate to envision them as the 8 spokes of a great wheel. Each spoke is essential. If one is weak or missing, the wheel will be unbalanced and the journey will be wobbly and difficult. But when all 8 spokes are strong, they support and reinforce one another, allowing the wheel to turn smoothly and powerfully forward. They are meant to be developed simultaneously, each one nourishing and deepening all the others. The spirit in which one walks this path is as important as the path itself. Before his enlightenment, the Buddha spent years practicing extreme asceticism. He starved his body, held his breath until he felt immense pain, and subjected himself to terrible hardships, believing that by punishing the body, he could liberate the spirit. But all he achieved was a weakened body and a clouded mind, making wisdom less, not more, accessible. He realized he had fallen into one extreme. He then recalled his earlier life as a prince, a life of complete sensual indulgence, and he knew that was the other extreme, a path that only led to distraction and deeper craving. In a moment of profound insight, he understood the necessity of a middle way. The classic story tells of him remembering the words of a musician tuning a stringed instrument like a lute or a sitar. The musician knows that if the string is too tight, it will sound shrill and is likely to snap. If the string is too loose, it will be dull and produce no clear sound at all. To create beautiful music, the string must be tuned with balance, not too tight and not too loose. The Eightfold Path is this middle way. It avoids the dead end of chasing pleasure and the dead end of self-punishment. It is a path of balance, of sustainable effort, and of gentle, persistent training. These 8 factors of the path are traditionally grouped into 3 essential divisions of training. The first is the division of wisdom, or panya in Pali. This is the foundation, the development of a clear and accurate view of reality. It is the map and the compass for the journey. It includes 2 factors. First is right understanding, sometimes called right view. This is the starting point. It means seeing things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. It is the understanding of the 4 noble truths, themselves seeing dukkha, its cause, its cessation, and the path. It is the direct seeing of the impermanent, interconnected, and impersonal nature of reality. Without right understanding, our efforts will be misguided, like a ship setting sail without a map. Second is right intention, or right thought. Once our understanding begins to clear, we must align our motivation. Right intention is the conscious commitment to orient our hearts and minds toward wisdom and compassion. It is the intention to let go of clinging, the intention of goodwill and kindness towards all beings, and the intention of harmlessness, a deep commitment to not cause suffering to oneself or others. It is setting our inner compass towards freedom. The second division of the path is ethical conduct, or sila. This is the application of wisdom in our daily lives, particularly in how we interact with others in the world. These practices are not moral commandments handed down from on high. Their purpose is deeply practical, to create a life free from remorse, guilt, and agitation. A mind troubled by its own unethical behavior cannot become calm and concentrated. Therefore, Sila is the essential groundwork for deep meditation. It includes 3 factors. Third is right speech. This means learning to use our words with skill and kindness. It is abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh or abusive language, and from idle chatter that distracts the mind. It is instead cultivating speech that is truthful, gentle, helpful, and timely. Fourth is right action. This involves aligning our physical behaviors with our intention of harmlessness. At its core, it means refraining from killing or physically harming any living being, refraining from taking what is not freely given, and refraining from sexual conduct that is exploitative or causes harm. It is about moving through the world with a gentle footprint. Fifth is right livelihood. This extends ethical conduct into our professional lives. It means earning a living in a way that does not bring harm to others. It is avoiding professions based on deception, exploitation, or the trade in weapons, intoxicants, or living beings. It is about finding a way to contribute to the world that is in harmony with our values. The third and final division of the path is mental discipline, or samadhi. With the foundation of wisdom and the groundwork of ethical living in place, we can now turn to the direct training and purification of the mind itself. This is the inner workout, the heart of the meditative practice. It includes 3 factors. Sixth is right effort. Like tuning the lute string, this is the balanced and joyful energy we apply to our mental training. It is the effort to prevent unwholesome, negative states of mind from arising. It is the effort to abandon those states if they have already arisen. It is the effort to cultivate wholesome, positive states of mind that have not yet arisen. And it is the effort to maintain and perfect those positive states that are already present. It is the work of a wise gardener, tending the soil of the mind. Seventh is right mindfulness. This is arguably the heart of the entire path. It is the practice of maintaining a clear, non-judgmental, moment-by-moment awareness of our experience. It is paying attention to the body, to the ever-changing flow of feelings, to the arising and passing of thoughts, and to the world around us. It is the practice of being fully present, of coming home to the here and now, which is the only place where life ever truly happens. Eighth is right concentration. As mindfulness becomes more stable, it leads to the development of right concentration. This is the ability to gather the scattered energy of the mind and unify it on a single point. A mind that is concentrated is calm, clear, and powerful, like a magnifying glass that can focus the rays of the sun to create fire. This focused state of deep calm is the platform from which the most profound insights into the nature of reality can arise. These 8 spokes work in perfect synergy. Right understanding gives you the motivation for right intention. Right intention guides your right speech and right action. Living an ethical life brings a sense of peace that allows you to practice right effort and right mindfulness without disturbance. This mindful attention, in turn, strengthens your right concentration. And a deeply concentrated mind is the tool that allows you to see with profound clarity, thus deepening your right understanding even further. The wheel begins to turn, gathering momentum with every rotation. The path itself becomes a self-reinforcing journey of ever-deepening wisdom and peace. This is the map that has been offered. It is comprehensive, it is practical, and it is profound. It addresses every aspect of our lives or view of the world, our motivations, our behavior, and our inner mental landscape. And like any great journey, though the destination may seem distant, it always begins with a single, deliberate step. For the Eightfold Path, that first crucial step is taken within the domain of wisdom, ensuring our map is accurate and our direction is true. It begins with cultivating right understanding. We begin our walk on the Noble Eightfold Path with its very first step, which falls under the great division of wisdom. For without wisdom, Without a clear view of the landscape, any effort we make will be misguided. The first and most fundamental pillar of this wisdom, the master key that unlocks the door to a different way of being, is the profound and intimate understanding of impermanence. In the Pali language, this is called anicca. At first glance, the idea that everything changes might seem obvious, even trivial. We see the seasons change, we watch our children grow, we know that nothing lasts forever. But to truly understand anicca is not just to acknowledge this fact intellectually, it is to feel its truth in our own bones, to see it operating in every single moment of our lives, and to realize that our primary struggle as human beings is a futile, lifelong war against this very law. Let us look at this law as it operates on every scale of existence. On the grandest cosmic scale, we see anicca in the life of stars, which are born from clouds of dust, burn brightly for billions of years, and then die in spectacular explosions, seeding the universe with the elements for new life. Mountains rise up over eons through the slow collision of tectonic plates, only to be worn down, grain by grain, by wind and rain and return to the sea. Nothing, not even the seemingly eternal mountains, is exempt from this universal flux. Now, bring your attention closer to your own body. We tend to think of our body as a solid, continuous thing, the same me that it was yesterday and will be tomorrow. But science affirms what the Buddha observed 2,500 years ago. The body is not a noun, it is a verb. It is a process. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced in this very moment. The air you just breathed in is different from the air you will breathe out. The person you were physically 7 years ago is almost entirely gone, replaced by new matter. The process we call aging is not a pathology to be fought, but the natural, graceful, and sometimes painful unfolding of anicca. Your body is a river of constant change, not a static statue. Now, let us turn inward to the landscape of the mind, for this is where our resistance to anicca creates the most suffering. Observe your emotions. Where is the anger you felt last week? Where is the joy you felt this morning? They arose, they seemed incredibly real and solid for a time, and then they passed away, replaced by something else. Emotions are like weather patterns passing through the vast sky of your awareness. They are not you, and they are not permanent. Yet we spend so much of our lives acting as if they are. When a pleasant feeling like happiness or excitement arises, our mind, driven by that deep thirst of Trishna, immediately tries to grasp it, to hold on to it, to build a permanent home there. This very act of clinging introduces a subtle anxiety, a fear of the moment ending, which poisons the joy itself. When an unpleasant feeling like sadness, fear, or frustration arises, we do the opposite. We resist it, we fight it, we try to push it away, telling ourselves, I shouldn't be feeling this. This resistance is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense energy, and the moment we let up, the ball shoots back up with even greater force. Our suffering is rarely the initial feeling itself, but the secondary layer of tension we create by fighting the reality that all feelings, pleasant and unpleasant, are by their very nature impermanent. Our thoughts are even more ephemeral, like clouds skittering across the sky on a windy day. A thought appears, a wisp of memory, a flicker of a plan, a fragment of a worry, and then it is gone. But we grant them such power, mistaking these fleeting mental events for solid truths, allowing them to dictate our entire emotional state. This is the war we wage. We try to build islands of permanence in the middle of a flowing river. We build our identity on our job, our youth, our health, our relationships, our wealth, all things which are by their very nature subject to change. And so, we live in a state of chronic, low-grade fear, because deep down, we know that the river is always moving and that our island will one day be washed away. This is the source of so much of our dukkha. Our suffering is not caused by the fact of change itself, but by our resistance to the fact of change. There is a beautiful Zen story that illuminates the wisdom of accepting anicca. A great Zen master had a favorite teacup. It was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, elegant and irreplaceable. He cherished this cup, used it every day, and often spoke of it to his students. One day, holding the cup, he said to them, "To me, this cup is already broken." He saw their confusion and continued, "I enjoy its beauty, the way it feels in my hands, the warmth of the tea. I care for it and protect it. But in my mind, it is already shattered into 1,000 pieces on the floor. For its nature is to be fragile, and its destiny is to one day break." Because the master had already accepted the cup's inevitable destruction, he was completely free from the fear of it breaking. This freedom allowed him to be fully present with the cup, to love it and appreciate it more deeply and completely than if he were living in constant anxiety, trying to protect it from its own nature. One afternoon, one of his students was carrying the cup and accidentally dropped it. It shattered on the stone floor. The student was mortified, bowing and apologizing, terrified of the master's reaction. The master, however, was perfectly calm. He looked down at the shards of ceramic and said simply, "Of course." Then he looked at the student, and it was time for tea. We are all holding precious, fragile teacups. Our youth is a teacup. Our health is a teacup. Our relationships are teacups. Our loved ones are teacups. Our own life is the most precious teacup of all. When we live under the delusion of permanence, we live in constant, anxious fear that these cups will break. We try to bubble wrap our lives, to control every outcome, to prevent the inevitable. This is a life of tension. But when we can learn to hold our lives with the wisdom of the Zen master, to see that everything is already broken, a profound shift occurs. It is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of radical love and realism. It liberates us from fear. When you know that a beautiful moment is fleeting, you pay more attention to it. You savor it. When you are with a loved one, knowing that your time together is not infinite, you are more present, more kind. The acceptance of impermanence does not diminish life. It infuses it with a precious, poignant beauty. It allows us to hold things with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. It fosters gratitude for what is here now rather than anxiety about what might be lost tomorrow. It builds resilience, for when difficult times inevitably come, we understand that they, too, are a passing storm, not a permanent address. And most importantly, it anchors us in the only time that is ever real, the present moment. The past is a memory, the future is an imagination. Both are ghosts. Life is only ever happening right now. To truly and deeply accept the law of Anika is to stop fighting with the river of reality. You learn to flow with it. This is the beginning of right understanding. It is the first clearing of the smoke of delusion. And once we begin to see this truth clearly, that everything we experience is in a state of constant flux, another, even more profound question naturally arises. If my body is constantly changing, if my feelings are constantly changing, if my thoughts are constantly changing, then who exactly is this I that I am trying so hard to protect? If everything is impermanent, what about the self? This question leads us directly to the next great pillar of wisdom on the path. We have stood at the edge of the great river of impermanence, Anika, and seen how everything in our external and internal world is in a constant state of flux. To see this clearly is to begin to loosen the fist of our clinging. This realization inevitably leads us to a question that is perhaps the most profound, challenging, and ultimately the most liberating in all of human thought. If my body is always changing, if my feelings are a passing weather system, if my thoughts are like clouds skittering across the sky, then who am I? What is this self, this I, that feels so solid, so central to my existence, the one I work so hard to please, promote, and protect? The answer that this path offers is the second great pillar of right understanding. It is the teaching of anatta, a Pali word often translated as no self or not self. Before we proceed, it is essential to say that this is not a teaching of annihilation. It does not mean that you do not exist, that you are a phantom, or that your life is meaningless. In fact, it is the very opposite. It is a teaching that points the way to a more authentic, fluid, and fearless way of living. It simply asks us to investigate our own experience with a radical honesty, to see if we can find the permanent, unchanging, independent self that we assume is there. The Buddha offered a method for this investigation, a way of deconstructing our experience into its component parts. He suggested that what we call a self is, in reality, a temporary coalition of 5 processes known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. Let us look at them together. First, there is form. This is the physical body with its flesh, blood, and bones. We ask, are you your body? As we have already seen, your body is a river of change, not a solid entity. The body you have now is not the body you had as a child, nor the one you will have in old age. The body gets sick, it gets injured, it ages. If it were truly you, you would have complete control over it, but you do not. So, we must conclude that the body is something we have, not something we are. Second, there is feeling. This is the constant stream of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations that arise from contact with the world. A cool breeze on a hot day is pleasant. The sound of a dental drill is unpleasant. The feeling of your chair against your back might be neutral. Are you your feelings? This is clearly not the case. Feelings are visitors. They come, they stay for a while, and then they leave. If you were your sadness, you would be sad forever. If you were your joy, it would never fade. Since they are impermanent, they cannot be a permanent self. Third, there is perception. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It's the process that says blue, dog, threat, or opportunity. Are you your perceptions? Your perceptions are conditioned and unreliable. A person you perceive as a friend one day might be perceived as an enemy the next. A piece of modern art might be perceived as beautiful by one person and as meaningless by another. Since perceptions are dependent on context and are constantly shifting, they cannot be a stable, independent self. Fourth, there are mental formations. This is a broad category that includes all of our thoughts, our ideas, our opinions, our beliefs, our prejudices, our intentions, our habits, and our volitions. This is the chattering committee in our heads, the inner narrator that is constantly commenting on life. This is what we most often identify with as me. But are you your thoughts? You can learn to observe your thoughts. You can watch a thought of anger arise and pass away. The one who is watching cannot be the same as the thing being watched. Thoughts are not solid things. They are fleeting events in consciousness. They are not the core of your being. Fifth, there is consciousness. This is the raw capacity for awareness itself, the knowing of the seeing, the knowing of the hearing, the knowing of the thinking. One might think, here it is. This awareness must be me. But the teaching invites us to look even closer. Consciousness, too, is not a monolithic, independent entity. It arises in dependence upon an object. There is consciousness of a sight, consciousness of a sound, consciousness of a thought. It flickers into being when there is something to be known, and it is always changing its object. It is not a permanent background knower, but another part of the flowing process. After this investigation, we are left with a puzzle. If the self is not in the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the thoughts, or the awareness, then where is it? An ancient text tells the story of a Greek king in India named Milinda, a man of sharp intellect who was intrigued by Buddhist philosophy. He sought out a wise sage named Nagasena to challenge him. The king began by asking the sage his name. Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a name, a convenient designation. In ultimate reality, he explained, there was no permanent person to be found. The king was baffled and amused by this. He gestured to his magnificent royal chariot and used it to corner the sage. He asked, if there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food? You arrived here. What did you arrive in? In a chariot, Nagasena replied. Excellent, said the king. Then please, define for me what this chariot is. Is it the pole? Is it the axle? Is it the wheels? Or the frame? Or the reins? Or the whip? To each question, Nagasena calmly answered, No, Your Majesty. The king pressed his advantage. Then, is the chariot all of these parts put together? No, said the sage. Then, is it something else? Something separate from all these parts? No, your majesty. The king, triumphant, declared, Then, revered sir, you are speaking a falsehood. There is no such thing as a chariot. But Nagasena remained perfectly calm. He turned the question back to the king. Your majesty, you consider yourself a great expert on chariots. Tell me, how do you define it? The king, now humbled, fell silent. Nagasena then explained, Chariot, your majesty, is just a convenient name, a term, a designation we give for this particular functional arrangement of a pole, an axle, wheels, and a frame. The word chariot is a concept we use to refer to the collection of parts when they are assembled in a certain way. But if you search for the essential, independent chariotness of the chariot, you will never find it. He paused, then looked at the king with kindness. Just so, your majesty, the words self, or person, or Nagasena are just convenient terms for the temporary coming together of the five aggregates of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. In the final analysis, no static, independent entity can be found. To hear this can be frightening. It can feel as if the ground beneath our feet is crumbling. If there is no self, what is the point? Does this mean I am nothing? But this is a misunderstanding. The teaching of Anatta does not say you are nothing, it says you are not a thing. It invites you to stop identifying with a fixed, rigid, and ultimately dead concept of yourself a statuand, to instead embrace your true nature as a living, dynamic, and interconnected processa river. A river has no fixed self. It is a continuous, ever-changing flow. Is it the same river today as it was yesterday? In a way, yes. In a way, no. The concept of anatta is the ultimate letting go. And in this letting go, we find an incredible freedom. Think of how much of our daily anxiety comes from defending this fictional self. We worry about our reputation. We are hurt by criticism. We are puffed up by praise. We compare ourselves to others. We are terrified of failure. We are terrified of death. All of this is the activity of a self trying to solidify and protect itself. When we begin to see, even for a moment, that the self is a construct, the whole neurotic project begins to collapse. There is no one to defend. There is no fragile ego to be shattered. The fear of death itself begins to transform, for what is there to be annihilated if not a solid, separate thing? Most beautifully, this understanding is the true root of compassion. As long as we believe in a solid me here and a solid you over there, we live in a state of fundamental separation. But when the walls of the ego become porous, we begin to see that we are all part of the same flowing river. Your suffering and my suffering are not separate events. Your joy and my joy arise from the same human heart. This is not a sentimental idea. It is a profound shift in perception that leads to genuine empathy and a desire to relieve the suffering of all beings as we see ourselves in them. This, then, is the completion of right understanding, to see the universal truth of impermanence, anicca, and to see the profound truth of no, self, anatta. These are the two wings that allow the bird of wisdom to fly. To grasp these ideas intellectually is the first crucial step. It is to have the map, but a map is not the territory. To truly be liberated by these truths, we must learn to see them not just as concepts, but as our own, moment-to-moment, lived reality. This requires that we move from the division of wisdom to the direct training of the mind. It requires that we learn the art and science of being present. It requires that we learn to practice right mindfulness. We have journeyed through the realm of wisdom, exploring the profound and liberating truths of impermanence, anicca, and no self, anatta. We now hold a new map of reality, one that shows us the landscape of our lives, not as a solid, fixed territory, but as a flowing, dynamic, and interconnected process. But a map, no matter how accurate, is useless unless we learn to read it and apply it to our journey. It is one thing to understand intellectually that the self is a construct, It is another thing entirely to experience the freedom that this realization brings. To do this, we must move from the division of wisdom to the division of mental discipline. We must learn how to train our minds to see these truths directly in our own experience. This is the practice of right mindfulness, the heart of the entire path, and the gateway into the vast landscape of mindfulness. The first and most loyal friend we have on this journey is the breath. The practice is called anapanasati, which simply means mindfulness of breathing. Why the breath? Of all the possible objects of meditation, why has this simple, humble process been the foundation of contemplative practice for millennia? The reasons are of a profound and practical beauty. First, the breath is always with us. From the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, it is our constant companion. We do not need to buy it or seek it or achieve it. It is freely available in every moment. Second, the breath is always in the present. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take a breath that is in the future. To be aware of your breathing is by definition to be in the here and now. It is a direct, incorruptible portal out of the ghost worlds of memory and fantasy and into the living reality of the present moment. Finally, the breath is neutral and honest. It carries no great story, no complex ideology. It is simply a physical sensation, and it is a perfect mirror of our inner state. When we are anxious or angry, the breath is short, shallow, and rapid. When we are calm and relaxed, the breath is deep, slow, and smooth. To watch the breath is to get a direct, unfiltered report from our own nervous system. So how do we begin? The instructions are almost shockingly simple. The first step is to find a posture that embodies a sense of dignity and ease. You can sit on a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your back straight but not stiff, or you can sit cross-legged on a cushion on the floor. The important thing is to create a posture that is stable and comfortable, one that allows the spine to be upright so that the breath can move freely. Relax your shoulders. Let your hands rest easily in your lap or on your knees. You can gently close your eyes, or if you prefer, you can lower your gaze and let it rest softly on the floor a few feet in front of you. Settle into your body, a posture of relaxed alertness, like a mountain, solid and present. Now, without changing anything at all, simply bring your attention to the feeling of your own breathing. You are not being asked to breathe in any special way, not to force it or control it. The breath breathes itself. Your task is much simpler. It is merely to feel it. You might choose a single spot to rest your attention, an anchor point. For many, this is the tip of the nostrils. You can feel the subtle sensation of the cool air entering as you breathe in, and the slightly warmer air passing over the same spot as you breathe out, in and out. There is nothing else you need to do. Just feel the simple, physical sensation of this breath and the next and the next. Some people prefer to anchor their attention in the abdomen, feeling the gentle rise on the in-breath and the gentle fall on the out-breath. Choose whichever spot is clearest for you and allow your awareness to rest there as gently as a butterfly landing on a flower. And now, the most important instruction of all. Within a few seconds, or perhaps a minute if you are lucky, you will notice that your attention is no longer on the breath. It has wandered away. You will be lost in a thought, planning your dinner, replaying a conversation, worrying about the future. This is the moment where the real practice begins. The arising of a thought is not a mistake. The wandering of the mind is not a failure. It is simply what minds do. The goal of this practice is not to have a perfectly blank, thought-free mind. The goal is to notice when the mind has wandered and to gently, kindly, and patiently guide it back. The moment you realize, I have been thinking, that very moment of realization is a moment of pure mindfulness. You have woken up. In that moment of waking up, it is crucial that you treat yourself with kindness. The voice of the inner critic will often jump in. There you go again. You can't even do this simple thing. You're a failure at meditation. You must learn to ignore this voice. Instead, you can silently and gently say to yourself, thinking, acknowledging what was happening without judgment, and then, with the same gentleness you would use to guide a lost child by the hand, you escort your attention back to your chosen anchor point, back to the simple physical sensation of the next breath. This process will repeat itself hundreds, perhaps thousands of times. You will feel the breath. The mind will wander. You will notice the wandering. You will gently return. This is the practice. Each return is a victory. Each time you notice and come back without scolding yourself, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are performing one perfect repetition of a sacred exercise. There's a classic story used to describe this process. An untrained mind is like a wild elephant, powerful and destructive, crashing through the jungle, uprooting trees and terrifying all other creatures. This is our mind, lost in the jungle of anxious thoughts and reactive emotions. To tame this elephant, a trainer gets a strong rope and ties one end around the elephant's leg and the other to a thick, sturdy post driven deep into the earth. The post is the breath, our anchor in the present moment. The rope is mindfulness. At first, the elephant is furious. It pulls and strains against the rope, trumpeting in rage, trying to get free. This is the mind in early meditation, restless and agitated, wanting to be anywhere but here. But the post is strong and the rope holds. Again and again, the elephant runs to the end of its tether and is reminded of the post. After some time, realizing its efforts are futile, the elephant begins to calm down. It may still pace around the post, but its struggle has subsided. Eventually, it gives up entirely and lies down peacefully at the foot of the post. After a long period of training, the mind, like the elephant, learns to rest calmly in the present moment. It discovers that the anchor of the breath is not a prison, but a place of safety and repose. This practice fundamentally changes your relationship with your thoughts. You are not trying to stop them or suppress them, which is impossible. Instead, you are learning to unhook yourself from them. You move from being a passenger inside the chaotic storm of your thinking, tossed about by every gust of wind, to becoming the calm, clear sky that holds the storm. You sit on the bank of the river of your mind and watch the thoughts float by like leaves on the current, without needing to jump in and be carried away by them. You see that they are just thoughts, impersonal, impermanent events in consciousness. They have no power over you unless you grant it to them by believing them and following them. This is the beginning of freedom, and so we begin here with this humble and profound practice. We learn to stabilize the mind, to anchor it in the present. Once we have found this stability, this calm center in the midst of the storm, we can then begin to widen our field of awareness. We can take this steady light of mindfulness and use it to illuminate the broader landscape of our being, and the most immediate territory to explore, the very ground of our existence, is the body itself. Having learned to quiet the mind by resting our attention on the gentle rhythm of the breath, we have found an anchor. We have discovered a place of relative stability, a safe harbor from the relentless storms of thought. Now, from this place of stability, we can begin to explore. We can gently widen the beam of our awareness from the single point of the breath to illuminate the rich and varied landscape of our own physical being. This is the practice of Kaya Gata Sati, or mindfulness of the body. For most of us, most of the time, we do not truly inhabit our bodies. We use them as vehicles, as taxis, to carry our heads from one meeting to the next, from one task to another. We live from the neck up, largely disconnected from the vast universe of sensation and intelligence that exists below. This practice is a homecoming. It is the conscious and gentle choice to return and live inside the totality of our physical experience. We begin, as always, from a place of stillness. Seated in your dignified and comfortable posture, allow your awareness of the breath to continue softly in the background. Now, as if you are holding a gentle spotlight, begin to guide your attention down through your body, all the way down to your feet. Bring your full awareness to your feet, resting there on the floor. What do you feel? You do not need to imagine or create any sensation. The invitation is simply to notice what is already here. Can you feel the points of contact between the soles of your feet and the floor? Can you feel the texture of your socks, the gentle pressure of your shoes? Perhaps you can feel a sense of warmth or coolness or a subtle tingling vibration. There is no right or wrong answer. If you feel numbness, simply be aware of the numbness. The practice is not to feel something special, but to feel whatever is actually present with a kind and curious attention. Slowly, gently, allow the spotlight of awareness to move up from your feet to your ankles, your lower legs, your shins and calves. What sensations are present here? Can you feel the subtle contact of clothing against your skin? Is there any tightness, any tension, any ease? Continue this slow journey upward to your knees and then into the large muscles of your thighs. Feel the weight of your body as it rests on the chair or cushion. Simply feel, without judgment, without commentary. Allow your awareness to fill your pelvic area, your hips, and then move into your torso. Bring your attention to your abdomen. Without changing your breath, can you feel the subtle movements here? The gentle expansion on the in-breath, the soft release on the out-breath? Journey upward into your chest, the area around your heart. Is there a sense of openness here or a sense of tightness? Again, you are not trying to fix or change anything. You are simply becoming intimate with the reality of your own body in this moment. Now, bring your awareness to your hands. Feel your fingers. Are they warm or cold? Can you feel the air on your skin? Trace the sensations up through your wrists, your forearms, your elbows, and your upper arms all the way to your shoulders. This is an area where many of us hold a great deal of unconscious tension. See if you can just notice the sensations in your shoulders, meeting them with a soft, allowing awareness. Let your attention fill your neck and your throat, and then slowly sweep up across your entire face. Feel the sensations around your mouth, your nose. Notice the delicate area around your eyes, the expanse of your forehead. Is it tense or relaxed? Finally, let your awareness expand to include the entire body, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, sitting here, breathing. Feel the body as a single, unified field of sensation, alive and vibrating. This is the practice of the body scan. It is a systematic way of reclaiming the lost territory of our own physical being. As you practice this, you begin to realize that the body is constantly speaking to you. It is a vast and intelligent communication system, but most of us have forgotten its language. The language of the body is sensation. Our emotions do not just live in our heads, they are deeply embodied. Anxiety might speak to you as a hollow knot in your stomach or a tightness in your chest. Anger might be a burning heat in your face and neck. Joy can feel like a radiant warmth or a sense of expansion in your heart. By learning to listen to the body, we gain access to a deeper, more intuitive form of wisdom that lies beneath the ceaseless chatter of the thinking mind. Consider the story of a man named Mark, a successful professional living a high-stress life. He suffers from chronic tension, headaches, and a stiff neck, which he treats with painkillers, seeing them as an unfortunate but unavoidable part of his life. He begins to practice mindfulness of the body. In the quiet of the practice, as he brings his attention to his shoulders and face, he makes a startling discovery. For the first time, he becomes consciously aware of a pattern. Whenever a stressful thought about work arises, his jaw clenches like a vice, and his shoulders subtly creep up towards his ears. He has been doing this completely unconsciously for years. This small moment of mindfulness is revolutionary. Because he is now aware of the pattern, he has a choice. When he notices the familiar clenching begin, he can now consciously, gently invite his jaw to soften and his shoulders to release. He learns that by releasing the physical tension, the power of the stressful thought diminishes as well. He has discovered that his physical pain was not a random affliction, but a direct message from his body, a message he can now understand and respond to with wisdom. The ultimate goal of this practice is not just to be mindful of the body when you are sitting still on a cushion, but to carry this awareness with you into your daily life. You can transform any activity into a meditation. When you are walking from your car to your office, you can practice mindful walking. Instead of being lost in thought, you can bring your attention to the physical act of walking. Feel the sole of your foot as it makes contact with the ground. Feel your leg lifting, moving through space, and placing itself down again. Each step can be a homecoming to the present moment. You can practice mindful eating. Take a single strawberry, Before you eat it, look at it. See its intricate colors and textures. Smell its fragrance. Place it in your mouth, but do not chew it right away. Feel its shape and texture with your tongue, and when you finally bite into it, experience the explosion of flavor as if for the very first time. Compare this to how we usually eat, mindlessly swallowing our food while staring at a screen, barely tasting a thing. You can bring this awareness to any routine action. When you wash the dishes, feel the warmth of the water on your hands, the smoothness of the plates, the sound of the running water. When you drink a cup of coffee, feel the warmth of the mug, smell the aroma, and taste each sip. Every moment of our lives, we have a body. Every moment, therefore, is an opportunity to practice, to wake up from the dream of our thoughts and make contact with the living reality of the present. This practice of inhabiting the body is profoundly grounding. When our minds are caught in a whirlwind of anxiety, fear, or obsessive planning, we feel scattered, unmoored, lost in abstraction. These thoughts are like clouds with no substance or solid ground. The body, however, is always here, always now. It is concrete. It is real. To bring your attention back to the simple, physical sensation of your feet on the floor or the feeling of your breath in your belly is to grab hold of a solid rock in the middle of a raging river. It pulls you out of your head and plants you firmly on the earth. It is the most direct and effective antidote to the anxious, disembodied state in which so many of us live. As we become more skilled at observing the gross physical sensations of the body, we begin to notice something more subtle. We notice the constant flow of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral tones that accompany these physical sensations. We notice the emotional charge that arises with them. This constant stream of feeling tone is the next layer of our experience to explore. To bring the same calm, non-judgmental awareness to this more subtle and reactive realm is the next great step on our journey of self-discovery. Having come home to the body, learning to inhabit the physical landscape of our being with a kind and curious attention, we begin to notice a more subtle layer of our experience. We see that sensation is rarely just a neutral, physical event. Every sight, every sound, every physical feeling that comes through the gates of our senses is met by an immediate, pre-verbal reaction in the mind. It is a simple primal judgment, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. I like this, I don't like this, I don't care about this. This immediate feeling tone, this emotional charge that colors all of our experience, is what the Buddha called Vedana. To practice mindfulness of Vedana is the next great step in our journey inward, a step that takes us to the very heart of the reactive mechanism that creates our suffering. Vedana is constantly arising. The feeling of a warm ray of sunshine on your skin is pleasant. The sound of a car alarm outside your window is unpleasant. The feeling of the air temperature in the room might be neutral. For most of our lives, we are completely driven by these feeling tones, reacting to them on autopilot. When a pleasant feeling arises, the mind's habit is to immediately grasp it, to cling to it, to say more of this, please. This is the birth of craving. When an unpleasant feeling arises, the mind's habit is to immediately resist it, to push it away, to say, get this away from me. This is the birth of aversion. And when a neutral feeling arises, the mind's habit is to simply ignore it, to become bored and check out, seeking something more stimulating. This is the birth of delusion, or ignorance. This moment, this arising of Vedana, is the critical fork in the road where we either continue down the well-worn path of automatic reaction and suffering, or we apply mindfulness and choose the path of wisdom and freedom. To understand the power of this practice, there is no story more potent than the Buddha's parable of the two arrows. Imagine you are walking through a forest and suddenly, without warning, an arrow flies through the trees and strikes you in the leg. The pain is immediate, sharp, and real. This is the first arrow. The Buddha taught that this first arrow is an unavoidable part of life. In our lives, the first arrows are sickness, loss, rejection, the unkind words of another, financial hardship, the pain of growing old. No matter how carefully we live, we cannot escape all of life's first arrows. They are a given of the human condition. Now, what is our typical response to being struck by this first arrow? Do we calmly assess the wound and tend to it? Rarely. Instead, we immediately start to generate a powerful mental and emotional reaction. We cry out, "Why me? This is terrible. Who shot this arrow? I'll find them. My whole day is ruined. My whole life might be ruined. I'll never walk properly again." We become consumed by anger, self-pity, fear, and blame. This entire secondary reaction, the Buddha explained, is the second arrow which we shoot into ourselves right next to the first one. The pain of the first arrow is inevitable. The suffering caused by the second arrow is entirely self-inflicted. The practice of mindfulness of feelings is the art of learning how to experience the sting of the first arrow without immediately shooting ourselves with the second. It is about learning to bear the unavoidable pain of life without adding the optional and often far more agonizing suffering of our own reactivity. So how do we do this? How do we sit with the sting of the first arrow? We do it by bringing the same gentle, non-judgmental awareness we cultivated with the body to the realm of our feelings. When a strong feeling arises, be it anger, sadness, fear, or even intense joy, our first step is not to act on it or to suppress it, but simply to allow it to be there. We make space for it. We give it permission to exist. This is a radical act in a culture that teaches us to either immediately gratify our pleasant feelings or immediately numb our unpleasant ones. A simple yet powerful technique to help us do this is to mentally label or note the feeling. When you feel a surge of anger, you can just say softly in your mind, "Anger, anger." When a wave of sadness washes over you, you can note sadness, sadness. This is not an intellectual analysis. It is a simple act of recognition. The label works like a gentle anchor, helping you to stay present with the raw energy of the emotion without getting lost in the story behind it. It creates a small pocket of space between you, the observer, and the emotion, the observed. In this space, freedom is born. You are no longer angry. You are the one who is aware of anger arising. From this place of awareness, you can then bring your attention back into the body and investigate the feeling as a physical sensation. Where does this sadness live in your body? Is it a heaviness in your chest? A lump in your throat? Where is this anxiety? Is it a swarm of butterflies in your stomach? A tightness in your shoulders? By exploring the emotion as pure physical energy, we strip it of its power. The story of "I am sad because of what happened yesterday" dissolves, and what is left is simply there is a feeling of heaviness here. We watch this energy, this weather pattern, as it changes, intensifies, and eventually, like all things, passes away. We experience directly the impermanent nature of our feelings, and we no longer need to be so terrified of them. This leads us to one of the most useful metaphors for this practice. You are not the weather, you are the sky. Your feelings are the weather. Sometimes it is sunny and clear. Sometimes it is cloudy and gray. Sometimes there are violent thunderstorms with lightning and hail. Our untrained habit is to believe that we are the weather. When we are angry, we say, "I am angry," as if our entire being has been consumed by the storm. When we are sad, "I am sad." Mindfulness practice is the gradual process of realizing that you are not the storm. You are the vast, open, boundless sky in which the weather of your feelings occurs. The sky is not harmed by the fiercest thunderstorm. It does not try to push the storm away, nor does it try to cling to the sunny day. It simply allows all weather to arise, to be present, and to pass in its own time. To cultivate this sky-like mind is to find a deep and abiding equanimity that is not dependent on having pleasant feelings all the time. It is a peace that can hold both joy and sorrow with the same spacious, compassionate embrace. When we practice in this way, we are short-circuiting the chain reaction of suffering at its most critical link. We experience an unpleasant feeling, the first arrow, and instead of immediately reacting with aversion, the second arrow, we meet the feeling with mindful acceptance. By doing this, we stop feeding the fires of Trishna. The chain is broken. This does not mean we become passive or that we never take action. It means that when we do act, our action comes not from a place of blind, emotional reactivity, but from a place of clarity, wisdom, and balance. As we become more familiar with this practice of watching our feelings, we inevitably begin to notice what so often triggers them. We notice the constant stream of inner commentary, the stories we tell ourselves, the judgments and opinions that bubble up from the depths of the mind. These thoughts and our feelings are intimately connected, each one feeding the other in a continuous loop. To go even deeper into the architecture of our own minds, we must now turn this same gentle, non-judgmental spotlight of awareness onto the thinking process itself. We must learn to watch the clouds, not just the weather they bring. We have journeyed from the anchor of the breath into the living landscape of the body and through the shifting weather of our feelings. With each step, our awareness has become more refined, more intimate. Now, we arrive at the very source of so much of our inner turmoil and our creative genius alike. We turn the gentle, steady light of mindfulness onto the mind itself. This is the practice of Satyanupassana, mindfulness of mind and of thought. This is where we learn to look directly at the inner narrator, the voice in the head that we have mistaken for our very self for our entire life. For most of us, our relationship with our own mind is one of complete identification. We believe we are the voice that thinks. Its commentary, its judgments, its worries, and its plans are not seen as activities of the mind, but as the very core of who we are. We live inside a relentless, non-stop internal monologue, a stream of consciousness that sweeps us along without our consent. We are like a person sitting in a movie theater, so completely absorbed in the film that we have forgotten we are sitting in a theater. We laugh when the movie is funny. We cry when it is sad. We are terrified when it is scary. We have forgotten that we are the audience, not the film itself. Mindfulness of mind is the simple, radical act of remembering that you are in the theater. It is the moment you lean back in your seat and become aware not just of the movie, but of the fact that you are watching a movie. This leads to the single most liberating discovery you can make on the spiritual path. You are not your thoughts. A thought is something you can be aware of. If you can be aware of a thought, there must be an awareness that is separate from the thought itself. Think about it. You can say to yourself, I am having a thought about my vacation. Who is the I that is having the thought? Who is the one that knows thinking is happening? This awareness, this knowing capacity, is different from the thought itself. Thoughts are simply events that arise and pass away within this wider field of awareness. They are like sounds that you hear or sensations that you feel. They are impersonal, fleeting phenomena. They are not you, and they are not in your control. They are not facts we must believe or commands we must obey. To practice this, we begin with the stability we have already cultivated. It is difficult to watch the subtle play of thought when the mind is wildly agitated, so we first anchor ourselves with the breath and the body. Then, we can gently shift our attention. Instead of watching the breath, we can watch for the next thought to arise. We can sit in the quiet space of awareness and just wait. A thought will appear. Perhaps it is a memory, the image of a friend's face. Perhaps it is a plan. I need to buy milk after this. Perhaps it is a judgment. This is boring. The instruction is to do nothing with the thought. Don't follow it. Don't analyze it. Don't judge it as good or bad. And most importantly, don't believe it. Simply recognize it for what it is. A thought has arisen. And then let it go, watching as it dissolves back into the space from which it came. A helpful metaphor is to see your awareness as the vast, clear, blue sky. Your thoughts are the clouds that drift through it. Some are white and puffy and pleasant. Some are dark and stormy and menacing. Our habit is to chase after the white clouds, trying to hold on to them and to run and hide from the dark ones. The practice of mindfulness of mind is to simply rest as the sky and allow all clouds of every shape and size to drift by without resistance. You are the sky, not the clouds. The sky is not improved by a beautiful cloud, nor is it damaged by a dark one. It remains spacious, open, and untouched, allowing all things to come and go. This practice reveals the true nature of what is often called the monkey mind. The Buddha described the untrained mind as being like a wild monkey, swinging frantically through the branches of a tree. It never rests. It grabs one brancha, worry about money, and before it even has a firm grip, it is already leaping to another branch of memory from the past. From there, it swings to a fantasy about the future, then to a judgment about itself, then to a sudden impulse. It is a state of restless, chaotic, and exhausting motion. Our mistake is that we believe we are this monkey. We are dragged along on this frantic journey, feeling every jolt and every swing. The practice is to learn how to sit peacefully at the foot of the tree and simply watch the monkey's antics. We don't try to chain the monkey or kill it. This would only make it more violent. We just watch with a kind of detached curiosity. Ah, look at that. The monkey is agitated today. It just grabbed the anxiety branch again. How interesting. The miraculous thing is that the monkey, feeling itself being watched with a steady, non-judgmental gaze, eventually begins to calm down. Its movements become less frantic. It learns to rest. We are not destroying the mind's energy. We are taming it, befriending it. As we watch this process, we begin to see our own conditioned patterns, the deep grooves worn into our minds by years of repetitive thinking. We might notice a recurring inner critic, a voice that constantly tells us we are not good enough. Through mindfulness, we can begin to hear this voice not as the truth, but simply as a conditioned habit, a scratched record playing the same old song. By seeing it as an impersonal pattern, it begins to lose its authority over us. We might notice a worry loop where the mind circles obsessively around the same fearful future scenarios. By watching this loop from the outside, instead of being trapped inside it, we can find the space to step out of it. We see that 99% of our thoughts are simply noise. They are reruns, echoes, and random mental weather. They do not require our attention, our engagement, or our belief. The simple act of learning to let thoughts be thoughts without getting entangled in them frees up an immense amount of mental and emotional energy. We learn to distinguish between thinking and being lost in thought. Thinking can be a useful tool. We need it to solve problems, to be creative, to plan. But being lost in thought, being unconsciously swept away by the current of the mind stream, is the source of almost all our anxiety and distress. Mindfulness is the skill of using thinking when you need it and letting it rest when you don't. It is the ability to put the tool down when the job is done. Through this fourfold path of mindfulness of breath, body, feelings, and mind, we have developed the fundamental skill of the witness. We have learned to sit in the center of our own experience, watching the ever-changing show with a calm, clear, and compassionate awareness. This is the foundation of the entire path. But the path is not merely one of passive observation. Now that we have built this stable platform of awareness, we can begin to use it to actively and skillfully shape our inner world. We can use our mindfulness to notice which states of mind lead to suffering and which lead to peace, and we can then gently learn to encourage the latter and release the former. This is where the path moves from receptive awareness to wise action. This is the practice of right effort. We have now spent considerable time cultivating the essential skill of the witness. Through mindfulness of breath, body, feelings, and mind, we have learned to step back from the chaotic drama of our own experience and observe it with a calm, clear, and spacious awareness. We have learned how to sit on the riverbank and watch the currents of life flow by without being swept away. This capacity for non-judgmental observation is the bedrock of the entire path. But it is not the end of the journey. The path is not one of passive resignation. Having developed this clarity of sight, we are now in a position to participate wisely in our own liberation. We can move from simply seeing the contents of our mind to skillfully cultivating the garden of our mind. This is the practice of right effort, or samma vayama in the Pali language. The word effort can be misleading for us in the modern world. We associate it with striving, with gritting our teeth, with a tense, forceful pushing towards a goal. We live in a culture of hustle, where effort often means sacrificing our well-being for a future reward, a path that so often leads to burnout and exhaustion. Right effort is the very antithesis of this. It is wise, gentle, and balanced. It is the perfectly tuned lute string, neither too tight with stressful striving, nor too loose with lazy complacency. It is the sustainable, joyful, and intelligent application of our energy. The most helpful way to understand this is to imagine that your mind is a garden. For years, this garden has been left untended. Weeds of anger, anxiety, greed, and jealousy have been allowed to grow wild, choking out the potential for beautiful flowers to blossom. Right effort is the work of becoming a wise and compassionate gardener of your own mind. This wise gardening involves 4 distinct, yet related, activities. The first is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. The wise gardener does not wait for the weeds to overrun his plot. He takes preventative measures. He builds a fence to keep out pests. He prepares the soil to make it less hospitable for weeds to take root. In our minds, this is the practice of guarding the senses. It means being mindful of what we allow into our consciousness. If we know that watching angry, divisive news programs fuels our own anger, we might choose to limit our exposure. If we know that endlessly scrolling through social media feeds our envy and sense of inadequacy, we might consciously choose to put the phone down. This is not about hiding from the world, but about recognizing that our mind is fertile ground, and it is wise not to deliberately plant the seeds of toxic weeds. The second activity is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts to build a fence, some weeds will inevitably sprout. A thought of sharp irritation towards a coworker arises. A pang of jealousy appears when we hear of a friend's success. A wave of selfish desire washes over us. What does the wise gardener do? He does not fly into a rage at the sight of the weed, cursing it and making a big drama. This would only disturb the rest of the garden, nor does he ignore it, allowing it to grow strong, drop its own seeds, and multiply. Instead, he mindfully acknowledges its presence. Ah, he notes calmly, a weed. Then, with skill and precision, he gently pulls it out from the root before it can cause more trouble. In our practice, when we notice a thought of anger has arisen, we first acknowledge it with mindfulness. Then, instead of watering it with more angry thoughts, we gently let it go. We might apply an antidote, consciously introducing a thought of kindness. We might investigate the feeling in our body until it dissolves, or we might simply, gently, return our full attention to the breath, cutting off the weed's supply of sunlight and water, which is our attention. We learn to abandon the unwholesome, not with violence, but with gentle and persistent wisdom. Of course, the gardener's work is not just about pulling weeds. A garden of bare earth is not the goal. So, the third activity is the effort to cultivate wholesome states that have not yet arisen. The wise gardener actively sows the seeds of the plants he wishes to see grow. He plants roses and lilies, tomatoes and lettuce. In our minds, this is the conscious decision to plant the seeds of kindness, compassion, generosity, patience, and gratitude. We can do this through intentional practices. We can read texts that inspire these qualities. We can reflect on the kindness others have shown us to cultivate gratitude. We can consciously wish others well. At first, these states may feel unfamiliar or weak, like tiny, fragile seeds. But with our deliberate effort and attention, we are creating the causes and conditions for these beautiful qualities to sprout in the garden of our minds. Finally, the fourth activity is the effort to maintain and nurture the wholesome states that have already arisen. When the gardener sees that a beautiful rose has begun to blossom, his work is not done. He must continue to water it, to make sure it gets enough sun, to protect it from harm. In the same way, when a moment of genuine peace or joy or compassion arises in our minds, we should not just let it pass by unnoticed. This is a precious moment. We can learn to savor it. We can give it our full attention. We can breathe with it, feel it in our body, and appreciate it. By consciously cherishing these wholesome states, we are watering them, encouraging them to grow stronger, more stable, and more frequent. What was once a rare visitor in the mind can, with this steady encouragement, become an abiding resident. These four great efforts, practiced together, transform the very landscape of our inner world. We move from being a passive victim of our mental states to being an active and empowered cultivator of our own well-being. But the attitude with which we undertake this gardening is paramount. This should not be a grim, joyless chore. the wise gardener finds delight in his work. He loves the feeling of the rich soil in his hands, the warmth of the sun on his back, the satisfaction of a neatly weeded row, the thrill of seeing the first green shoot emerge from the earth. Likewise, we must learn to find joy in the effort itself. We can celebrate the small victories. Every time we mindfully let go of an irritated thought, that is a cause for celebration. Every time we offer a silent wish of goodwill to another, that is a beautiful moment. We must not get caught in anxiously waiting for some final harvest of enlightenment. The joy is in the process. The peace is in the practice of cultivating peace. This sustainable, balanced, and even joyful effort is the engine that moves us along the path. It takes the passive awareness of mindfulness and turns it into a creative force for transformation. And as we stand here now, as wise gardeners looking over the fertile soil of our minds, a question arises: of all the beautiful and wholesome qualities we could choose to cultivate, which is the most important to plant first? Which flower has a fragrance so powerful it can sweeten the entire garden, making the soil richer and the air more pleasant for all other plants to grow? The ancient teachings are clear on this. The foundational quality, the great nutrient for the heart, is the quality of unconditional, boundless friendliness. It is the practice of loving kindness. Having committed to the path of the wise gardener, we now choose the first and most vital seed to plant in the soil of our minds. It is a seed that has the power to transform the entire inner landscape, to heal the wounds of anger and fear, and to dissolve the painful illusion of our separation from others. This is the practice of metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. Metta is a Pali word that is difficult to translate with a single English term. It is not the sentimental, conditional love of romance, nor is it the mere absence of ill will. Metta is a boundless, unconditional, and radiant friendliness, a sincere and heartfelt wish for the well-being of all living things, without exception and without discrimination. It is the powerful, active antidote to the poisons of anger, resentment, fear, and alienation. Before we can genuinely offer this kindness to others, the practice must begin in the one place we so often overlook, our own heart. We cannot pour water for others from an empty cup. If our own heart is a battlefield of self-criticism, judgment, and shame, any goodwill we try to extend to the outside world will feel hollow and inauthentic. Therefore, the first and most courageous step in cultivating metta is to learn to offer it to ourselves. This can be the most challenging part of the practice for many of us, raised in cultures that often mistake self-compassion for selfishness, but it is the essential foundation. So, we begin by once again finding a quiet and dignified posture. We let our bodies settle and our breath become natural. Then, we can begin to silently, gently offer a few simple phrases to ourselves, like a mantra or a lullaby for the heart. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease." You repeat these phrases slowly, allowing the intention behind them to gently permeate your being. It is very important to understand that you do not have to feel a certain way. At first, this practice might feel awkward, mechanical, or even bring up feelings of unworthiness. The critical inner voice may chime in, "You don't deserve this. That is okay." Let that voice be another cloud in the sky. Your only task is to gently, persistently offer the phrases. You are planting the seeds. It does not matter if the soil is rocky at first. The very act of offering the intention is the water that will, over time, soften the ground. Once you have spent some time offering metta to yourself, you can begin to expand the circle of kindness. The next step is to bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you feel easy, uncomplicated affection and gratitude. It could be a teacher, a family member, or a beloved pet. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye, see them happy and smiling, and now extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth that flows from your heart as you offer these sincere wishes. Let this feeling of uncomplicated goodwill grow strong. This stage helps us to tap into the feeling of metta in a way that is easy and joyful. Next, we stretch the muscle of the heart a little further. Bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see or interact with, but for whom you have no strong feelings of like or dislike. It could be the cashier at your grocery store, the mail carrier, a person you see on your daily commute. We so often walk through the world seeing other people as mere background characters in our own movie. This practice challenges our indifference. Picture this neutral person in your mind, and with the same sincerity, offer them the phrases of metta. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. In this act, a stranger is transformed from an object into a fellow subject, another being who, just like you, simply wants to be happy. Now comes the most transformative and sometimes the most challenging stage of the practice. If, and only if, you feel ready, you can bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have friction or conflict. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly irritating, not the source of your deepest trauma. See this person in your mind and acknowledge the difficult feelings that may arise. Then, see if you can look beyond the conflict and recognize their basic humanity. This person, just like you, was born and will one day die. This person, just like you, has known joy and sorrow. This person, just like you, wishes to be happy and to avoid suffering. Holding this understanding, see if you can, as an act for your own heart's freedom, offer them the phrases, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. This is not about condoning harmful behavior or forcing a reconciliation. This is about freeing yourself from the prison of your own resentment. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Metta is the cool water that allows you to finally open your hand and let the coal drop. Finally, having moved through these stages, you allow your heart to open completely. You radiate loving kindness in all directions, to all beings without exception, to your friends, your family, the neutral people, the difficult people, to people in your city, your country, and all around the world, to animals, to all creatures seen and unseen, large and small, near and far, in all directions, north, south, east, and west. Above and below you, send out this simple, powerful wish. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, the artificial barriers of self and other, us and them, begin to dissolve into a feeling of boundless, interconnected benevolence. The power of metta is not merely a feel-good emotion, it is a transformative spiritual force. There is a story of the Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, who plotted to assassinate him. He arranged for the fierce royal elephant, Nalagiri, to be intoxicated and then released onto the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. The elephant, enraged and drunk, charged down the street, screaming and destroying everything in its path. People fled in terror. The Buddha's own disciples pleaded with him to run, but the Buddha stood perfectly still. He did not raise a weapon or a shield. He simply turned his full attention to the charging beast and radiated a powerful, unwavering field of pure, loving kindness. As the elephant entered this aura of metta, a change began to occur. Its trumpeting softened. Its charging pace slowed to a walk. The rage in its eyes was replaced by a look of calm. The great beast walked right up to the Buddha, knelt before him, and allowed the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. The untamable rage of the elephant was subdued not by a greater force, but by the supreme power of unconditional love. The raging elephant is our own inner anger, our fear, and our resentment. It is also the anger and hatred we encounter in the world. We cannot conquer these energies by meeting them with more force. We can only tame them with the gentle, unshakable power of metta. This practice, done regularly, reorients the heart away from its habitual patterns of judgment and fear, and towards a new habit of kindness and connection. It is a returning to our own best nature. This wish for all beings to be happy and well is the foundation. But as we look at the world, we see that not all beings are happy. Many are in pain, in distress, in suffering. When our heart, softened by metta, encounters this direct suffering, our wish for their happiness naturally transforms into an active wish for their pain to be relieved. This movement from wishing for happiness to wishing for an end to suffering is the birth of a new, though deeply related, quality. It is the birth of compassion. Having planted the precious seed of metta, or loving kindness, in the garden of our minds, we have learned to offer the sincere wish for all beings to be happy and well. We have felt the warmth of a heart that wishes to include rather than exclude. But as we look upon the world, both within ourselves and outside, we see that happiness is not always present. We encounter pain, sorrow, fear, and distress. The heart that has been softened and opened by metta does not shut down in the face of this suffering. It does not turn away. Instead, it responds. The sunny warmth of loving kindness, when it touches the cold reality of pain, transforms into something else. It becomes the brave, tender, and active wish for that suffering to be relieved. This is the birth of karuna, the practice of compassion. If metta is the wish, may you be happy. Karuna is the wish. May you be free from your suffering. It is the quivering of the heart in response to pain, a quivering that is not rooted in fear, but in profound connection. It is essential to distinguish true compassion from its more common counterfeits. Karuna is not pity. Pity looks down from above. It says, "Oh, that poor thing," and in doing so, it creates a distance between the observer and the sufferer, reinforcing the ego of the one who pities. Compassion, in contrast, meets the other on level ground. It says, "I am here with you in this." It recognizes a shared humanity and closes the distance. Nor is true compassion the same as empathic distress or what is sometimes called idiot compassion. This is the state of becoming so overwhelmed and consumed by another's pain that you lose your own footing. It is jumping into a raging river to save a drowning person, only to find that you are both being swept away. This codependent suffering helps no one. True karuna is a union of a tender heart and a strong back. It has the wisdom and the stability to feel the reality of another's pain without becoming lost in it. It is the courage to stay present with suffering, offering not a solution, but the profound healing of a steady, loving presence. The practice of cultivating compassion mirrors the practice of metta, but with a different focus. We begin by bringing to mind a person, perhaps ourselves or someone we know, who is actively suffering. It could be a physical illness, an emotional hardship, or a difficult life situation. Instead of pushing away the discomfort of thinking about their pain, we allow ourselves to gently connect with the reality of their struggle. We acknowledge their pain without being consumed by it. Then, from this place of tender recognition, we offer them the sincere wishes of our heart. May you be free from this pain. May you be free from this sorrow. May your heart find peace. May you find the strength to meet these challenges. We breathe in, acknowledging their suffering. We breathe out, sending them our heartfelt wish for relief and peace. As with metta, we can then gradually expand this circle of compassion, extending it to all those in our community, our world, and ultimately to all beings who are caught in the web of dukkha. There is a powerful myth from Mahayana Buddhism that perfectly illustrates the nature of boundless compassion. It is the story of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, a great being who embodies the compassionate energy of all the Buddhas. Having reached the pinnacle of wisdom, Avalokiteshvara made a vow not to enter into the final peace of nirvana until all sentient beings were free from suffering. Looking down from on high, Avalokiteshvara saw the immense and endless suffering of the world, the cries of the hungry, the sick, the lonely, and the afraid. The sheer scale of this universal pain was so overwhelming that in an act of ultimate empathy, their head exploded into 1,000 pieces. The Buddha of boundless light, Amitabha, seeing this noble sacrifice, gathered the pieces and reassembled them into 11 heads so that Avalokiteshvara could hear the cries of suffering from all directions at once. But Avalokiteshvara then realized that just hearing the pain was not enough. In a prayer of profound aspiration, they wished for the power to actually help all these beings. In response to this powerful vow, their body grew 1,000 arms, and in the palm of each hand was an eye of wisdom. This is not a literal story. It is a profound psychological map. It teaches us that true compassion requires, first, the courage to be sensitive, to not shut down our hearts, but to allow ourselves to hear the cries of the world. It shows us that this initial encounter with suffering can be shattering, but it also shows us that from this broken openness, a greater capacity can be born. The 1,000 arms represent skillful means, the myriad ways we can offer help. The eye of wisdom in each hand is crucial. It signifies that true compassion is not blind. It is not just a sentimental feeling. It is united with wisdom. It sees the nature of suffering clearly and therefore knows how to act in a way that is truly helpful, not just well-intentioned. Avalokiteshvara is the archetype of the engaged, courageous, and wise heart that does not retreat from the world's pain, but leans into it with the sincere intention to heal. Nowhere is this practice more important or more challenging than when we turn it towards ourselves. We are all imperfect. We all make mistakes, we fail, we fall short of our own ideals, we cause harm to ourselves and others, whether intentionally or not. When this happens, we experience the first arrow of the event itself. But then, almost invariably, we shoot ourselves with a devastating volley of second arrows. The arrows of self-criticism, shame, guilt, and relentless self-judgment. We become our own harshest tormentor. Self-compassion, or karuna for oneself, is the practice of meeting our own failures and imperfections with the same kindness and understanding we would offer to a dear friend who was suffering. When you have made a mistake, instead of berating yourself, you can learn to pause. You can place a hand on your own heart, feel the pain of your own regret or shame, and offer yourself the phrases of compassion. This is a moment of suffering. It's okay to feel this way. May I be free from this self-judgment. May I learn from this experience. May I forgive myself. This is not about making excuses or avoiding responsibility. In fact, it is the opposite. The harsh voice of the inner critic often paralyzes us, making it impossible to learn. The warm embrace of self-compassion creates a sense of safety that allows us to look at our mistakes honestly without being destroyed by them. It gives us the strength to acknowledge the harm done, to make amends where possible, and to move forward with greater wisdom. It is the understanding that failure is not a sign of our personal worthlessness, but an inescapable part of the shared, imperfect human condition. When we water the garden of our minds with both the sunshine of metta and the gentle rain of karuna, the heart is profoundly transformed. It becomes resilient, tender, and brave. The rigid boundaries between self and others soften. The habit of judgment is replaced by a habit of connection. The coldness of fear and anger is replaced by the warmth of genuine care. And when this inner revolution takes place, it cannot be contained. A heart that has been so thoroughly changed will inevitably begin to express itself differently in the world. The very first place this transformation shows up is in the way we communicate. Our inner state of kindness and compassion naturally begins to flow into our words, shaping them into instruments of healing rather than weapons of harm. This leads us directly to the next fold in our path, the practice of right speech. As our hearts become more established in the qualities of loving kindness and compassion, a natural transformation begins to occur. This inner cultivation is not meant to remain a private, hidden experience. It must inevitably find its expression in the world. We now move from the inner training of the mind to the way we manifest this training in our daily lives. This is the great division of the path known as sila, or ethical conduct. It is the bridge between our intention and our impact, and the most constant, immediate, and powerful way we impact the world around us is through the words we use. This is the practice of right speech, or sama vacha. Words possess a formidable power. We use them so freely, so carelessly, that we often forget their capacity to be either instruments of healing or weapons of destruction. A single cruel word spoken in childhood can leave a scar on the heart that lasts a lifetime. A word of genuine encouragement at the right moment can alter the course of a person's life. Words can build bridges of understanding or erect walls of division. They can incite hatred and violence, or they can articulate the highest aspirations of the human spirit. Right speech is the conscious and skillful practice of wielding this power with wisdom and compassion, ensuring that our words become a source of benefit and not harm for ourselves and for others. The practice is traditionally defined by 4 guidelines, which are best understood as abstentions, things we learn to refrain from doing. The first is to abstain from false speech. This is more than simply avoiding outright lies. It is a deep commitment to truthfulness in all its forms. It means refraining from exaggeration to make our stories more interesting, from telling so-called white lies to avoid minor inconveniences, from speaking in a way that is deliberately misleading, and from making promises we do not intend to keep. When we practice this, we cultivate a profound sense of inner integrity. We no longer need to keep track of a complex web of deceptions. Our inner world and our outer world become aligned. Our word becomes solid and trustworthy, and this creates a foundation of deep peace within ourselves and in our relationships. The second guideline is to abstain from divisive speech. This is speech that is intended to set one person or group against another. Its most common and insidious form is gossip. When we speak ill of someone who is not present, we are planting seeds of discord. We may create a temporary, false sense of intimacy with the person we are gossiping with, but we do so at the cost of poisoning the wider community and our own mind. This practice invites us to notice the urge to slander, to complain about others, to carry tales from one person to another. It includes the modern-day equivalent of participating in online pile-ons or spreading rumors on social media. The practice of right speech is to instead use our words to promote harmony, to speak of the good qualities of others, and, when there is conflict, to speak in a way that encourages reconciliation and understanding. The third guideline is to abstain from harsh speech. This includes the obvious forms of verbal abuse, yelling, insulting, cursing, and name-calling, but it also encompasses the more subtle and often more painful forms of verbal aggression. It includes sarcasm that is used to belittle or wound. It includes backhanded compliments, a contemptuous tone of voice, and dismissive or condescending language. Harsh speech, in any form, comes from a place of anger and aversion. It closes the heart of both the speaker and the listener. The practice of right speech is to make our communication a safe space for others. It is the commitment to speak to people, even those with whom we strongly disagree, with a fundamental respect and gentleness. It is to remember the humanity of the person we are speaking to, always. The fourth and final guideline is to abstain from idle chatter. This is perhaps the most subtle, and in our noise-saturated modern world, one of the most important. Idle chatter is empty, aimless, pointless talk. It is the stream of commentary on trivialities, the filling of every available silence with noise, the talking that serves no purpose other than to distract ourselves from the present moment. It dissipates our mental energy and agitates the mind, making stillness and clarity impossible. To practice refraining from idle chatter is to begin to value silence. It is not about becoming cold or aloof, but about developing a sense of when speech is necessary and when it is not. It is to speak with purpose, to ensure our words are meaningful and contribute something of value, whether it is useful information, genuine connection, or heartfelt kindness. These 4 abstentions tell us what to avoid, but right speech also involves the active cultivation of skillful communication. One of the most powerful related practices is that of noble silence. This is not a punishment or a refusal to engage. It is a conscious, voluntary choice to stop talking for a period of time in order to listen more deeply, both to the world around us and to the world within. In noble silence, we become acutely aware of our own inner habits, our restless impulse to comment on everything. It is a deep rest for the mind. The other positive practice is that of deep listening. So often, when another person is speaking, we are not truly listening. we are busy formulating our own reply, waiting for our turn to talk. Deep, compassionate listening is the practice of offering our full, quiet, non-judgmental attention to another. We listen not just to their words, but to the feelings behind their words. To be truly heard is a rare and profound gift, and to offer this gift of our presence is a core component of right speech. There is a wonderful story from ancient Greece about the philosopher Socrates that serves as a practical guide for this practice. An acquaintance ran up to him one day, bursting with excitement. "Socrates," he said, "I have to tell you something I just heard about one of your friends." Socrates held up his hand to stop him. "Before you tell me," he said, "I would like you to pass a small test. It is called the triple filter test." The man agreed. "The first filter," Socrates said, "is truth. Are you absolutely certain that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man looked uneasy. "Well, no," he said. "I actually just heard it from someone else." Socrates nodded. "All right. The second filter is goodness. Is what you are about to tell me something good?" The man looked ashamed. "No, on the contrary," he said. Socrates continued. "So, you want to tell me something that is not certainly true and is not good. Let us try the third filter, the filter of usefulness. Is what you are about to tell me going to be useful to me?" The man had to admit that it was not. Socrates then delivered his conclusion. "If what you want to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor even useful, why tell it to me at all?" This ancient wisdom serves as a powerful practical checklist we can run in our own minds before we speak. By practicing these principles, we transform our speech from a source of unconscious reactivity into a conscious expression of our wisdom and compassion. Our words become cleaner, clearer, and kinder. This integrity creates a powerful sense of peace and self-respect. And as our words become aligned with the path, this alignment naturally creates a momentum that carries over into our larger physical behaviors. For our actions are so often born from our words. A promise spoken leads to a deed performed. A threat uttered can lead to an act of violence. By purifying our speech, we are preparing the ground for the purification of our entire way of being in the world. This leads us directly to the next element of skillful, ethical conduct, the practice of right action. Having cultivated a heart of kindness and compassion, and having learned to align our speech with these wholesome qualities, we now arrive at the next stage of our ethical training. We turn our attention from our words to our deeds. This is the practice of right action, or samma kammanta. It is here that our inner transformation finds its most concrete and visible expression. If right speech is the art of creating harmony with our words, right action is the art of moving through the world in a way that creates harmony with our entire being. It is about learning to make our physical footprint on the world one that is gentle, helpful, and, above all, harmless. At the very core of right action lies the principle of ahimsa, or non-harming. This is the conscious and unwavering commitment to abstain from actions that cause suffering to other living beings. It arises from the deep, intuitive understanding we cultivate through mindfulness, that all beings, from the smallest insect to the most powerful human, share a fundamental desire to live and to be free from pain. When we truly see this commonality, the desire to inflict harm naturally falls away, replaced by a desire to protect and cherish life. This principle of harmlessness is the ground upon which the three traditional guidelines of right action are built. The first of these guidelines is to abstain from taking life. On its most basic level, this is a clear injunction against killing other human beings and, by extension, other sentient creatures. It is a recognition of the sanctity of life. But in our complex, interconnected modern world, this principle invites us into a deeper inquiry. While we may not be directly harming another being, we can ask ourselves, how do my actions indirectly contribute to suffering? How do the products I buy and the food I eat affect the well-being of other creatures and the health of the planet that sustains us all? This is not a call to guilt or fanaticism, but a gentle invitation to bring mindfulness and compassion into our consumer choices, to act in a way that minimizes the harm our existence causes in the world. The second guideline is to abstain from taking what is not given. At its simplest, this means refraining from stealing the physical property of others. It is a practice of respecting the right of others to their own belongings. But again, we can expand our understanding of this principle. We can steal things other than material objects. We can steal someone's time by being chronically late or by monopolizing a conversation without listening. In a professional setting, we can steal credit for work we did not do. On a global scale, our current lifestyles can be seen as stealing resources from future generations. To practice this precept fully is to cultivate a profound respect for the boundaries, property, and contributions of others, both tangible and intangible. It is to live with a spirit of generosity and fairness rather than one of grasping and entitlement. The third guideline is to abstain from sexual misconduct. In a world with complex and often confusing attitudes about sexuality, this principle offers a clear and compassionate compass. It is not a puritanical rejection of sexuality. It is a recognition that our sexual energy is powerful and can be a source of profound connection or profound suffering. Right action guides us to express this energy in a way that is founded on mutual respect, deep kindness, consent, and honesty. It means refraining from any sexual act that involves exploitation, coercion, or causing harm to another person's body, heart, or existing relationships. It is about bringing our full mindfulness and our compassionate heart into our most intimate connections, ensuring they are a source of true well-being and not harm for ourselves and for others. These three guidelines form the foundation of ethical action. They are not external commandments imposed by an authority figure, but practical instructions for living a life free from the inner torment of remorse, guilt, and fear. When we act in ways that cause harm, we agitate our own minds and make the cultivation of inner peace impossible. By living within these guidelines, we create a life of serene integrity, a life where our outer actions are in perfect harmony with our inner aspirations for peace. The power of this path to transform a life is perhaps best illustrated by the dramatic story of Angulimala. Angulimala was a fearsome serial killer who terrorized the kingdom of Kosala. Misguided by a malevolent teacher, he had vowed to kill 1,000 people, and as proof of his kills, he wore a gruesome garland made from his victims' finger shents, his name, which means finger garland. He was so terrifying that travelers avoided entire regions of the country, and villages were abandoned in fear. One day, despite the warnings of all the local people, the Buddha calmly set out on foot, walking down the very road where Angulimala was known to lurk. Angulimala saw the lone monk approaching and was overjoyed, thinking, "Here is my final victim to complete my vow." He drew his sword and began to run after the Buddha, but a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exhausted and bewildered, he shouted from a distance, "Stop, monk, stop!" The Buddha, still walking calmly, turned his head and replied with a clear, steady voice, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." This enigmatic statement struck Angulimala like a bolt of lightning. What could it mean? He demanded an explanation. The Buddha replied, "I have stopped forever from doing violence to any living being. I have laid down the sword. You, however, are still running on the endless wheel of violence, hatred, and causing suffering. You have not stopped." In that moment, the power of the Buddha's compassion and wisdom shattered Angulimala's delusion. He saw the horror of his actions and the terrible suffering he had caused, and he was overcome with remorse. He threw down his sword, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and begged to be accepted as a monk. The Buddha, seeing his potential for transformation, agreed. The path of redemption for Angulimala was not easy. When he would go on his alms round into the city, people would recognize him and, in their fear and anger, would throw stones and refuse him food. He would often return to the monastery bleeding and bruised, but he endured it all with incredible patience, understanding it as the karmic consequence of his past actions. Through his dedicated practice of meditation and his commitment to a life of complete harmlessness, the man who was once the most feared killer in the land eventually became a fully enlightened arahat a being of profound peace and wisdom. The story of Angulimala is a powerful testament that right action is not just about being a good person from the start. It is a transformative path available to anyone, no matter how far they have strayed. It shows that our past actions do not have to define our future, and that the human heart has an infinite capacity for change. Furthermore, right action is not just a passive list of things to avoid. It is a proactive call to do good. It is the thousand arms of Avalokiteshvara in practice. It is seeing someone in need and offering help. It is performing small, anonymous acts of kindness. It is protecting those who are vulnerable and caring for the natural world that sustains us. Every action we take, no matter how small, is a seed we plant. Actions rooted in greed, hatred, and ignorance will bear the fruit of suffering. Actions rooted in generosity, kindness, and wisdom. The actions of right action will bear the fruit of peace for ourselves and for all those whose lives we touch. For most of us in the modern world, a vast portion of our time, energy, and action is dedicated to our work, to the way we make our living. It is therefore essential that we extend these principles of ethical conduct into our professional lives. How we choose to earn a living is one of the most significant actions we take. This brings us to the next fold of the path, the practice of right livelihood. Having aligned our speech and our physical actions with the principles of kindness and non-harming, we now arrive at a crucial and intensely practical area of our lives, our work. For most of us, the way we earn our living consumes the largest portion of our waking hours. It is the activity through which our skills, energy, and time are most significantly channeled into the world. The Eightfold Path would be incomplete if it did not provide guidance on how to engage in this central aspect of our lives with wisdom and integrity. This is the practice of right livelihood, or sama ajiva. It is the art of making our work an integrated part of our spiritual path rather than a separate, disconnected compartment of our lives. The practice of right livelihood flows directly from the principle of ahimsa, or non-harming. If we are committed to not causing harm through our individual actions, it follows that we should also seek to avoid earning our living through activities that cause systemic harm. In his teachings, the Buddha was very specific about this, naming 5 types of commerce that should be avoided because they are fundamentally based on causing suffering. These are business in weapons, which facilitate violence and death, business in living beings, which includes slavery, human trafficking, and the raising of animals for slaughter, the production and sale of meat, business in intoxicants such as alcohol and drugs, which cloud the mind and lead to heedlessness, and business in poisons. This traditional list serves as a clear ethical compass, pointing us away from professions that are in direct contradiction to a path of compassion. In our modern globalized economy, these principles invite us into a much broader and more subtle inquiry. The ripple effects of our work can be vast and difficult to see. So, right livelihood encourages us to engage in a gentle, non-judgmental self-reflection. We can begin to ask ourselves questions about our work. Does my company's business model exploit people either here or in faraway countries? Does my work contribute to the degradation of the natural environment that all beings depend on? Does my industry promote a culture of addictive consumerism, greed, or dissatisfaction? Do I work in a system that thrives on creating or profiting from the anxiety and division of others? Now, it is absolutely essential to approach these questions with immense compassion for ourselves. For the vast majority of people, the freedom to choose a perfectly ethical job that aligns with all our highest values is a luxury we do not have. We have families to feed, mortgages to pay, and responsibilities to meet. The purpose of this inquiry is not to generate a feeling of guilt or to suggest that everyone in a compromised position must immediately quit their job. That is not the middle way. The purpose, as always in this practice, is to first bring awareness. To simply see things clearly, without judgment, is the first and most crucial step. Once we are aware of the consequences of our work, we can begin to make small, skillful choices to mitigate harm and to orient ourselves, over time, towards work that is more meaningful. Perhaps the most empowering teaching of right livelihood is this: the how of your work is often more important than the what. You can practice right livelihood in any job by bringing mindfulness, skill, and right intention to the work you do. Consider the example of a person whose job is to sweep the streets. In the eyes of the world, this may be considered a low-status, undesirable job. But let us imagine this street sweeper is a practitioner of the path. When she sweeps, she is fully present. Her mind isn't lost in resentment about her job or fantasizing about being somewhere else. She is mindful of the feeling of the broom in her hands, the rhythmic sound of the bristles on the pavement, the physical movements of her body. Furthermore, she infuses her work with right intention. As she sweeps, she holds the thought, "With this work, I am creating a clean, beautiful, and safe space for my community. I am removing glass that could cut a child's foot and dirt that could cause sickness. I am bringing a small measure of order and care to this world." She is honest about her hours, and she is kind to the people she encounters during her day. Now compare this street sweeper to a high-powered executive at a nonprofit organization that ostensibly does good work. But this executive is driven by a powerful ego, a desire for fame and recognition. He is ruthless with his employees, creating a toxic work environment of fear and stress. His mind is consumed by greed and anxiety about fundraising and competition. In this comparison, who is truly practicing right livelihood? The answer is clear. The humble street sweeper, by infusing her simple work with mindfulness and a pure intention of service, is living a life of greater integrity and peace than the executive whose work is, on the surface, more prestigious. This teaches us that the dignity of our work comes not from our job title, but from the quality of consciousness we bring to it. This means that no matter what our current job is, we can begin practicing right livelihood today. We can practice integrity by being honest in all our professional dealings. We can practice right speech by refusing to participate in office gossip and by speaking to our colleagues and customers with kindness and respect. We can practice right action by performing our duties diligently and not cutting corners. Most importantly, we can practice right intention by looking for the aspect of our work that is of genuine service to others. Even in the most mundane job, there is an opportunity to be helpful, to make someone's day a little easier, to create order, or to contribute to a functioning society. By focusing on this service aspect of our work, we can transform it from a mere means of survival into a meaningful part of our spiritual practice. We learn to bring our whole self to our work, not just the part that wants a paycheck. When we commit to right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we complete the training in Sila, or ethical conduct. These three folds of the path create a beautiful, stable, and powerful container for our lives. By consciously choosing to reduce the harm we cause through our words, our deeds, and our work, we simultaneously and automatically reduce the causes for agitation in our own minds. A life lived with integrity is a life free from the poisons of guilt, remorse, and the fear of being discovered. It creates a mind that is calm, bright, and confident. A mind in this state unburdened by the baggage of unethical behavior is the ideal ground for the deeper and more subtle practices of meditation. Having established this solid foundation of ethical living, we are now fully prepared to enter the third great division of the path, the training in samadhi, or mental discipline. We are ready to learn how to focus the mind, making it a powerful instrument of insight and liberation. Having laid the strong and beautiful foundation of Sila, or ethical conduct, we have created a life that is free from the agitation of remorse and guilt. By aligning our speech, our actions, and our livelihood with the principles of kindness and non-harming, we have calmed the most turbulent waters of our mind. We now arrive on the shores of Samadhi, the great division of the path dedicated to the direct training and mastery of the mind itself. Here, we learn to gather the scattered fragments of our attention and unify them, transforming the mind from a flickering candle in the wind into a steady, brilliant beacon. This is the practice of right concentration, or Sama Samadhi. It is helpful to first understand the relationship between the mindfulness we have already been cultivating and the concentration we now seek to develop. They are two wings of the same bird, distinct but inseparable. Right mindfulness, as we have seen, is a broad, open, receptive awareness. It is like a wide-angle lens, taking in the whole picture without getting fixated on any single part. It is the gentle shepherd that notices when a sheep has wandered from the flock. Right concentration, on the other hand, is like a powerful zoom lens or a laser pointer. It is the ability to place our attention onto a single object and hold it there, steady and unwavering. It is the flock, gathered together as one, calm and unified. These two qualities work together. When we are practicing concentration on the breath, it is mindfulness that notices when our attention has drifted away into thought. It is right effort that provides the gentle energy to release the distraction. And it is right concentration that is the result, the mind abiding with the breath, settled and serene. The state of our ordinary, untrained mind can be compared to a candle flame in a drafty room. The doors and windows are all open. The flame is constantly buffeted by every passing current of air-very thought, every memory, every external sound, every internal sensation. It flickers wildly, it sputters, it casts a weak and unsteady light. In this chaotic, flickering light, it is impossible to see anything in the room with any clarity. Our practice of sila, ethical conduct, was the work of closing the main doors, preventing the great gales of guilt and remorse from disturbing the room. Our practice of mindfulness has been the work of noticing and closing the smaller windows and cracks, reducing the subtle drafts of distraction. Right concentration is the result of this work. It is the experience of the candle flame in a room that has become perfectly still. When all the drafts are gone, the flame naturally becomes steady, bright, and powerful. Its energy is no longer dissipated. It burns with an unwavering intensity, and its light illuminates the entire room with a brilliant, stable clarity. In this light, we can see everything as it truly is. The precise colors on the wall, the intricate texture of the furniture, the subtlest dust motes dancing in the air. This is a metaphor for the concentrated mind, a mind that is unified and still possesses an immense power to see reality with a depth and clarity that is utterly inaccessible to a mind that is fragmented and distracted. It is crucial to understand that this state of concentration is not achieved through force. You cannot make the flame steady by yelling at it or by trying to hold it still with your hand. This kind of tense, white-knuckled effort only creates more agitation, more drafts. Concentration arises not from straining, but from releasing. It is the natural state of the mind when it is no longer being constantly pulled in 100 different directions by the forces of desire and aversion. As we lose interest in the endless parade of distractions, as we gently and repeatedly let them go, the mind naturally settles. It unifies around the chosen object of meditation, like the breath, finding a deep sense of rest and contentment in simply being present. As this concentration deepens, the mind can enter into states of profound calm and bliss known as the jhanas. This is a topic that can sound esoteric, but the jhanas are simply descriptions of natural psychological states that arise when the primary obstacles in the mind are temporarily suspended. When our craving for sense pleasures, our ill will towards the unpleasant, our mental laziness, our anxious restlessness, and our skeptical doubt are all put aside through sustained attention, the mind's natural luminosity and joy can shine through. In the first of these states, a powerful sense of rapture and pleasure is born from this seclusion, from our usual mental clutter. It is a vibrant, energizing joy, a deep contentment that is not dependent on any external stimulus. As the concentration deepens further, this initial excitement calms down into a more stable and profound happiness, born now from the concentration itself. The inner chatter of the thinking mind subsides. In an even deeper state, the energetic quality of rapture fades away, leaving a peaceful, all-pervading sense of ease and equanimity. And finally, even this deep pleasure is transcended, leaving only a state of pure, unshakable peacefulness and one-pointedness of mind. The mind is like a perfectly still mountain lake on a windless day, its surface reflecting the sky with perfect, undistorted clarity. It is very important not to see these pleasant and peaceful states as the final goal of the path. They are not a form of spiritual escape or a place to permanently hide from the world. They are best understood as a sharpening of the tool. They are the result of creating a mind that is so exquisitely calm, clear, unified, and powerful that it can be used for its ultimate purpose. Just as an astronomer needs a perfectly ground and stable telescope to see into the depths of space, a meditator needs a perfectly calm and stable mind to see into the depths of their own nature. A distracted mind is like trying to perform surgery with a trembling hand. A concentrated mind is a steady, precise, and powerful instrument. We have now, through our diligent practice, created this instrument. Through the ethical conduct of Sila, we built a stable workbench, free from the vibrations of a troubled life. Through the discipline of Samadhi, culminating in right concentration, we have taken the raw material of our mind and honed it into a tool of incredible power and precision. The mind is now collected, unified, and bright. The candle flame is burning with a steady and brilliant light. The final step of the path is to take this magnificent instrument and put it to its ultimate use. We must now turn this bright, steady light of concentration back onto our own experience, to investigate the nature of our body, our feelings, and our thoughts with a clarity that was previously impossible. We are now ready to cut through the veil of ignorance and see things as they truly are. This is the work of insight, the practice of Vipassana. We have now walked the divisions of Sila, ethical conduct, and Samadhi, mental discipline. Through ethical living, we have created a life of integrity, freeing the mind from the turbulence of guilt and remorse. Through the practice of concentration, we have gathered the scattered rays of our attention, forging the mind into a tool of exceptional power, clarity, and stillness. Our metaphorical candle now burns with a bright, unwavering flame in a room that has been made perfectly still. The instrument has been sharpened, the telescope has been polished and stabilized. Now, we arrive at the very purpose for which all this preparation was undertaken. We must take this powerful, concentrated mind and turn it back upon ourselves to see into the very nature of our own experience with a clarity that was previously impossible. This is the practice of Vipassana, the third and final division of the path, the division of Panya, or liberating wisdom. Vipassana is a Pali word that means clear seeing or special insight. It is the culmination of our journey, the moment when we use the calmed and unified mind not merely to find peace, but to find freedom. The practice here shifts. In concentration practice, or samatha, we train the mind to rest on a single object, like the breath, and to disregard all distractions. We are cultivating stability. In Vipassana practice, we use that stability to open our field of awareness and begin a deep, sustained investigation into the nature of reality itself as it unfolds moment by moment. The object of meditation is no longer a single point, but the very flow of life itself. We are no longer just calming the mind, we are using the calm mind to see the truth. And what is it that we are looking for? We are looking to experience directly in the laboratory of our own being the three fundamental characteristics of all conditioned existence, which we first encountered conceptually in our exploration of right understanding. These are the three marks of existence: anicca, impermanence; dukkha, unsatisfactoriness; and anatta, no self. With a concentrated mind, these are no longer philosophical ideas. They become our lived reality. We turn our bright, steady attention to the flow of our experience, and we see anicca, impermanence, with a startling clarity. We watch a single thought. We see it arise from nothing, flicker in the space of the mind for a mere instant, and then completely vanish. We feel a sensation of warmth in our hand, and we watch it, noticing how it subtly changes, pulses, and eventually fades away. We see that every single component of our experience, every sight, sound, smell, taste, sensation, and thought is engaged in a momentary, fleeting dance of arising and ceasing. The mind that is able to stay with this flow without distraction sees that there is nothing solid to hold onto anywhere. The world is not a collection of static things, but a dynamic, ever-changing process. It is a waterfall of ceaseless creation and dissolution. As we see this constant flux, we also begin to see dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, in a new and more subtle way. We see that any attempt to grasp onto a pleasant sensation in this ceaseless flow is inherently stressful. The moment we try to freeze a pleasant feeling, to make it permanent, a subtle tension and anxiety is born. We see that even the most blissful states are impermanent and therefore ultimately unreliable as a source of lasting happiness. This is not a depressing realization. It is a profoundly liberating one. We are seeing, for ourselves, the very mechanism of our own discontent. We are seeing that our suffering comes not from the world itself, but from our impossible demand that the flowing river of life stand still for our personal pleasure. And as we watch this impersonal, ever-changing cascade of phenomena, we come to the deepest and most transformative insight of all: anatta, no self. With a mind that is sharp and clear, we look for the one who is experiencing all of this. We look for the I, the CEO in the head, the permanent self who is the owner of these experiences, and we cannot find it. We see a thought, but we cannot find a permanent thinker behind it. We see a feeling, but we cannot find a permanent feeler. We see that the awareness itself, the very sense of knowing, is also part of the impersonal, flowing process. The self we have spent our entire lives defending and promoting is revealed to be another thought, a story, a concept that arises and passes away just like everything else. We see that there is no statue at the center of the machine, only the dynamic, interconnected process of the machine itself. To illustrate the power of this insight, there is a classic parable. A man walks into his dark bedroom at night. As his eyes adjust, he sees on the floor what he takes to be a coiled snake. Instantly, his body is flooded with adrenaline. His heart pounds in his chest. His mind races with terror. His suffering is 100% real, generated by his perception. Now, he could try to calm himself down. He could practice breathing to slow his heart rate. He could tell himself, "Don't be afraid." These calming techniques might offer temporary relief, but as long as he believes there is a snake on the floor, the root of his fear remains. But then, a friend walks into the room and simply flicks on the light switch. In that instant of bright illumination, the man sees with perfect clarity that it was never a snake. It was just a coiled piece of rope. What happens to his fear in that moment? It vanishes. It disappears completely and automatically. He does not have to try not to be afraid of the rope. He does not have to give himself a lecture on the difference between ropes and snakes. The clear seeing of the truth itself is what liberates him from his suffering. His problem was not a snake. His problem was a misperception. In this story, our deep-seated, instinctual belief in a solid, permanent self and in lasting sources of happiness is the snake in the dark. This belief is the root cause of our deepest fears, our grasping, our anxiety, and our suffering. The practice of samatha, of calming the mind, is like trying to soothe ourselves while the snake is still believed to be in the room. It is helpful, but it is not liberating. The practice of vipassana is the act of turning on the light. It is the insight that sees directly that there is no snake, that there never was a snake. There is only the harmless rope of an impersonal, impermanent, and interconnected process. When this is seen with unshakable clarity, the root of suffering is cut. The fear is extinguished, not because we have bravely fought it, but because its very cause has been revealed as an illusion. This is the liberation the path points to. It is not a state of otherworldly bliss or a disembodied trance. It is the deep, abiding, and unshakable peace that comes from seeing things exactly as they are. The first arrows of life will still arrive, the body will still age, people we love will still die, circumstances will still change. But the second arrows of our own, making the arrows of terror, of grasping, of resentment, of self-pity are no longer fired. The fuel for these reactions, the core delusion of a separate self that needs to be protected, has been consumed in the light of wisdom. This profound moment of seeing is the peak of the meditative path, but it is not the end. For this wisdom, born in the deep stillness of meditation, must be tested and integrated. It must be brought down from the mountain and learn to live in the valley. The final challenge, and the true fruition of the path, is to learn how to carry this clear sight, this liberated heart, into the messy, complicated, and beautiful marketplace of our everyday human lives. We have journeyed to the summit of the mountain. In the deep, clarifying stillness of concentration, we have experienced the liberating insight of Vipassanatha, direct seeing of reality as it is, impermanent, interconnected, and empty of a separate self. We have seen the snake in the dark room for what it is, a harmless piece of rope. This is the pinnacle of the path, the moment of profound wisdom, and yet the journey is not complete. A question, the most practical question of all, still remains. So what? How does this lofty insight, experienced in the silent sanctuary of meditation, help us when we are faced with the noise, the pressure, and the chaos of our everyday lives? The answer is that the summit is not a place to build a permanent home. It is a place from which to see the whole landscape clearly, so that we can learn to walk skillfully in the valley below. The true fruition of the path is found in its integration. It is the practice of carrying our wisdom off the cushion and into the world. It is the art of finding our Zen, not just in the monastery, but in the marketplace. For too long, we have treated our spiritual practice and our real life as two separate things. We meditate for 20 minutes in the morning to find a moment of peace, only to then plunge into a day of reactive stress, frustration, and distraction, as if the two were unrelated. The invitation now is to dissolve this boundary. Our daily life, with its difficult relationships, its demanding jobs, its unexpected challenges, is not an obstacle to our practice. It is our practice. The office, the kitchen, the freeway, these are our new meditation halls. Every interaction, every moment becomes an opportunity to apply our wisdom. Consider our relationships. So often, they are a source of our greatest suffering, a theater for our ego's dramas. When a disagreement arises with a partner or a friend, our untrained mind immediately goes into combat mode. We stop listening. We retreat behind walls of self-righteousness, marshaling our arguments, preparing our next verbal attack. Our whole being is consumed by the desperate need to be right. A mindful approach to conflict is radically different. Grounded in our practice, we can learn to listen with the intention to understand, not just to reply. We can feel the anger or hurt arising in our own body, the tightness in the chest, the heat in the face sands. See it as a bell of mindfulness. This bell is a signal, an invitation to pause, to take one conscious breath before we speak. In that precious gap, we can choose our response. Instead of lashing out with a, "You always do this," we can speak from a place of vulnerability and truth. When this happens, I feel hurt. We learn to see the other person not as an adversary, but as another suffering being who, just like us, wants to be happy. This does not mean we become a doormat. It means we learn to be firm with clarity and kindness, not with reactive aggression. Our difficult emotions themselves become our greatest teachers. Instead of viewing frustration in a traffic jam, anxiety before a public presentation, or the sting of disappointment as enemies to be vanquished, we can learn to greet them as messengers. When anxiety arises, we can acknowledge it. Ah, anxiety is here. This is what it feels like. We can feel it in our body without being swept away by the catastrophic stories it tells. By meeting our difficult emotions with this friendly, non-judgmental awareness, we rob them of their power. They are no longer terrifying monsters in the dark. They are simply weather patterns passing through the vast open sky of our awareness. This practice of integration also challenges our relationship with the culture of materialism that surrounds us. We are constantly bombarded with the message that our happiness lies in the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next acquisition. This fuels a perpetual state of dissatisfaction, a feeling that we are not enough and what we have is not enough. Mindfulness provides a powerful antidote. Before making a purchase, we can pause and ask, am I buying this out of a genuine need? Or am I trying to soothe an inner feeling of emptiness or anxiety? We can bring awareness to the compulsive itch to add to cart. The greatest antidote to this culture of more is the practice of gratitude. Instead of focusing our mental energy on what we lack, we can intentionally rest our attention on what we have. We can feel gratitude for the simple fact of the breath entering and leaving our body, for the food we have to eat, for the roof over our head, for the presence of a friend. Gratitude is a radical act of reorienting the mind from a state of perceived poverty to a state of true abundance. In the Zen tradition, there is a famous series of 10 images known as the ox-herding pictures, which beautifully depict the entire journey of enlightenment and its final integration into the world. The story begins with a young boy searching for his lost ox, which represents his own true nature, his Buddha self. At first, he can only find its tracks. Then, he gets a glimpse of the ox's tail. After a great struggle, he manages to catch the wild ox and begins the long, difficult process of taming it with his rope and whip, which represent the tools of meditative discipline. Gradually, the ox becomes gentle, and he is able to ride it home, playing his flute in joyful harmony. But the journey doesn't end there. In a later stage, he arrives home and forgets the ox entirely. The tool has served its purpose. Then, in an even deeper stage, the boy himself disappears. All that is left is an empty circle, representing the realization of emptiness, or Anathath seeing through of the illusion of a separate self. For many, this might seem like the final goal, a state of transcendent emptiness. But this is not the end of the Zen path. The 10th and final picture is the most important of all. It is called Entering the Marketplace with Bliss-Bestowing Hands. The image shows the boy, now a joyful, pot-bellied old man, walking back into the village. He is not depicted as an austere hermit in a cave. He is in the midst of ordinary life, mingling with shopkeepers and children, sharing a drink, laughing. His hands are open, giving. He is an ordinary person who has been utterly transformed from within. He radiates a simple, earthy, and compassionate presence. This is the ultimate expression of our practice. The goal is not to achieve a state of permanent trance or to escape from the troubles of the world. The goal is to return to the world as a source of healing and peace. It is to be able to navigate the complexities, the joys, and the sorrows of ordinary human life with a free and open heart. It is to realize that true peace is not the absence of problems, but the ability to be present with our problems with a steady, compassionate, and unwavering mind. The wisdom of the old man in the marketplace, his ability to be so free and so joyful in the midst of ordinary life, comes from one simple, profound realization. It is the understanding that the ultimate refuge, the final answer, is not to be found in any lofty concept or future attainment. It is found in the utter simplicity and completeness of this very moment. We have traveled a long and winding path together. We have navigated the great divisions of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. We have explored the nature of our suffering, its causes, and the possibility of its end. We have learned to tame the mind, to open the heart, and to see with a clarity that penetrates through the veils of illusion. We have followed this ancient map, step by step, practice by practice, only to arrive at a destination that is perhaps the most surprising of all. We arrive at the exact place where we began. We arrive right here, right now, in the simple, unadorned, and complete reality of this very moment. For the ultimate truth of the path is that there is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve, and no one to become. The entire journey was simply a process of clearing away the dust and debris that prevented us from seeing the treasure that has been in our possession all along. Our entire life, our entire culture, is built upon a fundamental premise that happiness is a future destination. We live in a state of perpetual almost there. We tell ourselves, I will be happy when I get that promotion. I will be at peace when I finish this stressful project. I will feel whole when I find the perfect partner. I will relax when I finally go on vacation. We even bring this mindset to our spiritual practice. I will be liberated when I have a profound insight, when I have mastered this meditation. This is the great deception of the restless mind. It constantly dangles a carrot of future fulfillment just beyond our reach, ensuring that we are never satisfied with where we are. It keeps us running on a treadmill, forever chasing a horizon that recedes with every step we take. The final teaching of this path cuts through this delusion with the simple, radical truth. Happiness is not a destination. It is a way of being. And it is only available in one place and at one time, here and now. Your life is not a dress rehearsal for some future event. Your life is only ever this moment. The past is a ghost, a collection of memories and thoughts. The future is a phantom, a collection of hopes and fears. The only thing that is ever real, the only ground on which you can ever stand, is the ground of the present moment. All the practices we have explored mindfulness, concentration, loving kindness, wisdom were never intended to help you escape from this moment. They were designed to help you arrive in it, fully and completely. To arrive in the present moment is to practice a radical, unconditional acceptance of what is. This does not mean that we become passive or that we must like everything that happens. If you have a painful headache, acceptance does not mean pretending you enjoy the pain. It means you stop adding a second layer of suffering by mentally resisting the reality of the pain. You drop the story of, "This shouldn't be happening. I can't stand this." And you are left with the simple, direct, and more manageable reality of, "There is a sensation of throbbing in my head right now." By dropping the war with reality, we find an unexpected peace, even in the midst of difficulty. We first accept what is, and from that place of clear-seeing acceptance, any action we take will be wiser and more effective. The late Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, a great teacher of this profound simplicity, often used a tangerine as a tool for teaching the deepest truths of the path. He would hold a single small tangerine in the palm of his hand, and he would not just see a piece of fruit. In that tangerine, he would see the sun, the rain, and the rich earth that nourished the tangerine tree. He would see the farmer who tended the tree and the blossom that became the fruit. He saw in that single tangerine the interconnectedness of the entire cosmos. Then he would begin to peel it, slowly, mindfully. He would be aware of the bright citrus scent that filled the air, the delicate texture of the peel under his fingernails. He would separate one section, and before placing it in his mouth, he would look at it as a miracle. When he ate it, he was not just consuming calories, he was partaking in the mystery of life itself. His teaching was simple. If you are eating a tangerine, but your mind is lost in worrying about the past or planning for the future, then you are not really eating the tangerine at all. The miracle of the fruit, the miracle of being alive to experience it, is completely lost. You might as well be eating a piece of cardboard. But if you can bring your whole being, your full presence, to the simple act of eating that tangerine, then in that moment, you can taste the entire universe. You can find liberation in an act as simple as eating a piece of fruit. The path is not in the clouds. It is right here, on our plate, in our breath, in our teacup. This points to the final release, the letting go of the immense burden of becoming. Our ego is a project manager, constantly trying to improve us, to fix us, to build us into a better, more enlightened, more successful version of ourselves. This project is exhausting. It is rooted in the belief that who we are right now is not enough. The practice of presence is the choice to resign from this impossible job. It is the deep, profound relaxation that comes from letting go of the need to be anyone other than who you are, right here, right now. You do not need to add anything to yourself. You do not need to achieve a special state. Your true nature, your Buddha nature, is already present, already complete. Like the clear sky that has been temporarily obscured by clouds, all you need to do is stop stirring up the clouds and rest in the being that you already are. Your true home is not in the past or the future. Your true home is always and only in the present moment. The journey of the Eightfold Path, in all its richness and complexity, is simply a journey of homecoming. Every step was a step back to here. Every practice was a tool to help you see what is already present. The breath is here. The sensations in your body are here. The sky above you is here. The ground beneath your feet is here. This moment is a gift. It is all we truly have. To be fully present with it in all its ordinary and miraculous beauty, is the beginning and the end of the path. It is the peace that surpasses all understanding. We began this journey together in a traffic jam, sitting alongside Jane, a stand-in for so many of us, feeling the familiar tightening in the chest, the relentless buzz of a demanding world, the quiet desperation of a life lived on a treadmill. Let us return to her now, in that same car, in that same traffic. The external circumstances have not changed. The horns still blare, the emails still wait, the pressures of life are still present, but inside, everything is different. She feels the tightness in her chest begin to arise, but now she meets it not with fear, but with a familiar, friendly awareness. She recognizes it as just a sensation, a weather pattern passing through the vast sky of her being. She hears the buzz of her phone, and it is just a sound, no longer a command that hijacks her peace. She feels her breath, a quiet, steady anchor in the midst of the chaos. The world has not changed, but her relationship to it has been utterly transformed. She has not escaped the marketplace. She has found the monastery within her own heart. This is the fruit of the path we have walked. Our journey took us through the courageous act of acknowledging our own discontent, our dukkha, not as a personal failure, but as a shared human condition. We investigated its cause, finding its root not in the world outside, but in the inner mechanics of our own mind, the restless thirst of Trishna that constantly grasps and pushes away. And then, we received the most hopeful news imaginable, the truth of Nirodha, the reality that this suffering can end, that the fires of greed and aversion can be extinguished. Finally, we were given the map, the Noble Eightfold Path, a comprehensive guide to cultivating the wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline necessary to walk ourselves from bondage to freedom. If there is a single message to take from this entire journey, it is this: peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not an achievement to be won or a prize to be found in some distant time or place. It is your own true nature, the inherent quality of a mind that is not at war with itself. It is the clear sky behind the clouds, the clean water beneath the mud. It has been here all along, waiting patiently in the quiet sanctuary of the present moment. The teachings we have explored are not a doctrine to be believed, but a direct, practical invitation to turn inward and discover this truth for yourself. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to go anywhere. You already possess everything you need to begin. You have a body. You have a breath. You have a mind. These are the only tools required. The journey does not start with a vow of renunciation or a grand gesture. It starts with a single conscious breath. It starts with the simple intention to be present just for this moment. It starts with the kindness you offer to yourself when you notice you have been lost, and the gentleness with which you guide yourself back home. Peace is not a sudden revolution. It is a quiet homecoming, repeated again and again, one breath at a time. The path is always beneath your feet. The door is always unlocked. All you need to do is gently turn the knob and walk through.